All right, thank you. Oh, thank you, everyone. I'll go ahead and call this meeting to order. I want to start off by saying thank you, everyone, for coming tonight. I know the issue that we'll talk about later in the meeting. We have a couple other things to get through before we get there. Our dogs. And one of the things I wanted to highlight this time around is we want, and we'll go over these rules as we get closer to the public comment section of the meeting, but we want the meeting and the feedback and everyone in the audience to be respectful to other people. And we'll go more over what that means in a little bit. But one of the things I've noticed is people have signs, which I appreciate the passion and I appreciate the enthusiasm, but we ask that you keep those under your chairs as we go through this meeting. So, yeah. So Kelly, do you want to call roll?
Thank you, Chair. Beiersdorf.
Here.
DiLorenzo.
Here.
Hanley.
Here.
Ingraham.
Here.
Jacobs.
Here.
Simersky.
Here.
And Wallach.
Here. All right, reports from staff.
Thank you, Chair. I just have one announcement to make, and that would be the addendum that was sent out earlier this afternoon. The addendum relates to email feedback that we received after the distribution of the packet on Thursday regarding business item 7B. That's the only announcement tonight.
All right, thank you. Then we move on to approval of minutes from our last meeting in February. Does anyone have any discussion with this, or are we okay with making a motion?
I make a motion to approve.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Oh, there you go. One call roll.
Beiersdorf.
Accept.
DiLorenzo.
Abstain.
Hanley. Ingraham.
Approve.
Approve.
Jacobs.
Approve.
Simersky.
Abstain.
Wallach.
Approve. All right. Next item is citizens wishing to discuss items not on the agenda, of which we have none, it looks like. And then the next item would be special matters, but if I'm correct, we don't have any of those.
We do not have any this evening.
Okay. And moving on to business items.
Sounds good. Thank you, Chair. Our first business item is 7A, which is the Natural Resources Division's 2024 Outreach, Education, and Engagement Plan. And Christine Peterson will do the presentation.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair Wallach and Park Board members, for giving me time this evening to present the annual Natural Resources Outreach, Education, and Engagement update. It's always a pleasure to come here every year and do this. I wanted to start with a bit of context for the benefit of those who are here or watching from home who might not be familiar with the Natural Resource Division's work or this portion of that work. So some definitions, I guess. Outreach, Education, and Engagement, or OEE, if you don't mind the acronym for brevity, is really how we inform and inspire the public to recognize and appreciate natural resources, and how we empower folks to take actions that protect and improve those shared resources in our public spaces and on private property, so we can all enjoy the benefits of natural resources now and hopefully for generations to come. So Natural Resources has numerous experts on staff, and our work encompasses a number of priorities and themes that often intersect, and so OEE can help us to bring that to the public. And we want to do that not just for residents of Minnetonka, but also for those folks who come here to work from other communities, or to recreate, to learn, to worship, to shop, or however else they engage with our community. And of course, we can't do all this work on our own, so we achieve big goals through partnerships with other cities, with the county and state agencies, as well as with organizations, schools, businesses, and clubs. So what that looks like is basically that there are many ways to put OEE into practice, from providing print and electronic materials that people can find and explore on their own time, to holding in-person events and having hands-on experiences. And through all of that, OEE informs and empowers our community, our whole community, to enjoy and protect natural resources wherever they are. So perhaps they're taking a walk in the park with their dog, and they encounter a sign that reminds them to pick up pet waste to protect water quality. Perhaps they encounter one of our interpretive signs and get some micro-learning. Maybe a handout that or activity that they download before they go outdoors to a park or just to their backyard. Maybe they only drive through our city and see one of our highway billboards. Or they attend a formal event or an informal event, or just sit at the kitchen table catching up on their reading. And those are all work samples from 2023, incidentally. So just a brief summary of 2023. We did dozens of articles or print materials, electronic materials, new interpretive signage at the Civic Center and the Marsh. Held 24 events hitting on many of those natural resources priority themes that I mentioned before. We have a new online learning module about buckthorn control, which has had over 1,100 hits last time I checked. And we also provided access to other learning modules through our partners. We have initiatives that are ongoing for us, from stormwater education, pollinator protection, and Resilient Minnetonka, which I will mention later, that's about resilience on private property. And crucially, we have a robust volunteer program. So first, we might say, why do we engage volunteers in natural resources? Well, the simple answer is capacity. So volunteerism helps the public understand the value of the natural environment and brings people together who might not normally engage with each other, but come because they love the parks or the resources there, builds a sense of ownership, and involves people, shows them what we do and what they can do even on their own private property. And the end result of that, at least from the restoration component of our volunteer program, is restoring more acres of land, which we all appreciate. So thank you, before anything else, to all of our 2023 volunteers who are just amazing. And it is a growing program. In 2023, we had 401 participants from 31 cities who contributed 4,107 hours of service. And you'll see from the numbers there that those are significant increases even over just the year before. We have many volunteer groups. About 75% of the hours in natural resources volunteering go into restoration in the park. So that's the tough work. That is invasive species control and everything related to that. And then hopefully getting a chance also to do planting and seeding and to see how that all can be improved. So thank you to all of these groups that participate, also to our youth volunteers and to other types of volunteers like wildlife monitors and the Adopt a Park Sign and Facilities volunteers who work with more formal plantings at Civic Center and our park entries. So impact, right? A nonprofit group called Independent Sector every year calculates the hourly value of volunteerism in the United States, and that came in 2023 to more than $31 per hour. So you can see what that adds up to when you have more than 4,000 hours of service. I thought it would help to have a little context again on how restoration happens. Of course, I mentioned we have a great staff of experts, and we are able to hire some contractors for specialist projects. We have an ICW, or Sentence to Serve, crew that can help us as well, but really only a fraction of this could happen without volunteer involvement. They do tremendous amounts of work and increase our capacity to even set and achieve those big restoration goals. So I wanted to spotlight, for example, Big Willow Park. Here is a pair of photos, before and after, from October of 2022. Friends of Minnetonka Parks had held an event. So a number of volunteers over a period of hours can make a big impact. Clearing out, you can see on the left, it's choked in the understory of this area with buckthorn, which is common in our woodland areas and openings and edges in Minnetonka. Clearing all of that out, treating the stumps to try to reduce resprouting, stacking that debris, And then staff comes in and picks it up, and an ICW crew can run that material through the chipper so we have mulch to reuse. It's a fabulous machine, everybody working together. I also wanted to spotlight our youth volunteers from the Minnetonka High School Natural Resources Club for one of their projects they did this year that I really enjoyed and already mentioned to the park board at an earlier meeting this year about pet waste management. The fifth graders at Groveland and all fourth and fifth graders in schools in the city of Minnetonka get stormwater education. Well, we came in and were able to get them to learn about pet waste reduction in order to protect water quality. The high school students made a video, translated into Spanish, and then came into the classrooms with me over 2 days to coach the students, again in English and Spanish, because Groveland is a Spanish immersion school, to make public service announcements, which became part of the signage. You saw one example of that earlier that will be going up in some new locations, about 12 new locations in our parks this spring. I also wanted to highlight our Resilient Minnetonka program because we know that Minnetonka has so many parks, but we also have a large amount of natural area on private property. So we want to get folks working on that, and we have to overcome some barriers to do that. So we wanted to provide education and resources, technical assistance and incentives. We'd done earlier versions of this the 2 prior years, but in 2023, we were able to work with 192 households in this program. Many of them participated in the native plant sale. More than a quarter of them were able to get free site consultations on their properties in order to start planning and implementing resilience plantings. We had a rebate available for those folks. A couple of households were able to get assistance with design costs, and we offered a free buckthorn pickup as well. So 2024, this program begins on April 1st, and we have a number of education offerings starting as part of that. And finally, upcoming in 2024, by way of a plan, we will be reorganizing and rebranding the Natural Resources web section so that we have more content that's easier to navigate. We'll be doing tree treks at local schools, a kind of interpretive signage. Many workshops and presentations, some with new partners. We're doing a new online learning module about garlic mustard. And through our initiatives, we'll be collaborating with those our local watershed districts to expand the number of participants and the resulting outcomes through Resilient Minnetonka. And through the Mayor's Monarch Pledge, we will be doing a community science effort and activities for Monarch and Pollinator Awareness Month in July. And then volunteerism, we are building a new citywide volunteer hub and an e-bulletin related to volunteerism, and we'll be expanding our recruitment efforts as well. So that's everything I have, and I'd be happy to take any questions. Thanks for your time.
I just want to start off by saying thank you for all of that. It's always amazing to see just the outreach and the education that Minnetonka does. It's one of the reasons why I just love being a resident of the city, is I still learn so much from you guys through social media and Minnetonka Memo and everything. And I'm excited about the workshops coming up. I always like to see cooperations and collaborations between the cities and the schools. I think that's awesome. And I thought the poo thing was hilarious, yet also informative, so congratulations. And I also just want to say thank you to all the volunteers who take part in restoration efforts and just everything that it comes to Minnetonka Parks. And I mean, the Friends of Minnetonka Parks is an amazing group, but also just the individuals too that help out whenever they can. You guys, I think, are part of what makes the city great and what keeps the city helps to keep the city beautiful, like, in the city that we love. So, yeah. Oh, well, provide feedback. Oh, questions. Sorry, questions for the park board.
Yeah, that's
No. So we'll open. Yeah. Sorry about that. It's confusing.
I I also want to again acknowledge the great effort in terms of outreach. I always enjoy reading, learning a lot. I mostly through the Minnetonka Memo, and I also want to again thank, as Chris did, the volunteer efforts throughout our parks and the degree of restoration. I've been going through our parks for decades. Won't say how many, but a few, and. I think in particular in the last 3 years, to me, it seems like we've really made a lot of progress in the parks through a lot of hard work as well as contracted efforts. And I know there's a lot of dog walkers here, dog lovers. I am one too. If you haven't been to Woodrill Nature Area, which is just kind of behind the Wayzata Country Club, or down to Lake Riley Creek Nature Area, great places to go with your dogs. When I went to Woodrill, I discovered what it's like to be in a natural state without an undercarriage, or I'm not a naturalist, understructure, where the canopy's open, and so you see the trees and not the buckthorn and stuff. And I would encourage you, if you haven't been there, it was a revelation, and you can kind of see that now coming to bear in the ridgeline and Purgatory, as well as the example shown from Big Willow. So I just want to thank all the people who are making that possible.
Does anyone else have anything? Okay, we will open the floor to public comment. Yeah, so it's oddly formal. So just come up, give us your name and your address, and then you can address the park board staff, and then we'll go from there.
I just had a question about the garlic mustard.
Oh, sure.
Yeah. So,
Sorry.
my name is Virginia
Okay.
Berland, and I live on Woodhaven, which is pretty close to here. So,
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
my neighbors had quite a bit of buckthorn, and that buckthorn, some of it was taken out, and then the garlic mustard invaded in. And so there's a lot of garlic mustard in the woods behind, and it is just, I'm trying to keep it off my property, but it's really, really hard. So what do you guys, it's almost like the buckthorn was preventing it from coming, and then once the buckthorn was removed, wow. So,
Sure, yeah, it's a good question. We often see other invasive species come in, like especially garlic mustard, after buckthorn is removed, or after even the tree falls in the forest or something along those lines. The light, the disturbance to the soil. So, strategizing. We do have in the buckthorn learning module, there's a buckthorn workshop, there's a garlic mustard workshop, and then soon, hopefully a couple months, we'll have the garlic mustard learning module to help with strategies. But basically, it's an ongoing effort. We don't consider that we're ever going to be able to completely eradicate those two invasive species in particular. So I encourage you to keep working up to your property and get something else planted into that space that can try to compete. Shrubs are getting a good play to create that understory layer that buckthorn removed, and to shade out some of those invasive species like garlic mustard.
okay, have you ever used chemicals to kill when it's
If you're interested,
extensive?
if you're thinking about that, I would go to the garlic mustard workshop, which is coming up on May 7th.
Okay.
So you can look on the city website under the natural resources section and our events. You can sign up
Okay.
for that.
Okay.
Yeah,
Oh,
thanks for your interest and concern.
Steve Schmirler, 5215 Forest Road. Just a question, since we are so close to the Monarch corridor or I-35, I was just wondering what type of milkweed mixes and stuff you're putting out there for the pollinators.
Yeah, absolutely. So if folks aren't aware, Minnetonka's been a part of the Mayor's Monarch Pledge program through National Wildlife Federation since 2017. We are, for the third year, a Monarch champion, which means we met all of the 29 activities or sort of efforts on that list. So we're thinking a lot about monarchs and pollinators. But for milkweed in particular, if you don't know, monarchs are in decline. Milkweed is the only type of plant that their caterpillars can eat. So as we're thinking about restoring or even just planting, mixing native species into your formal plantings, milkweed should be a part of that. It's a really cool plant too. But common milkweed is tippy top. People don't always like it because it spreads, but it's a really amazing plant. And then depending on the growing conditions, butterfly milkweed or swamp milkweed. So butterfly milkweed does well in drier conditions, and swamp milkweed, or rose milkweed, it's sometimes called, in wetter soil conditions, would be the top three, I think, that do the best here. There are 7 or so that are native to Minnesota, and any of them you're welcome to try. Some of the others can be a little tricky to grow. But thanks for your interest in that addition to your yard.
Okay, thank you. All right, so moving on to business item B, the Purgatory Park Master Plan Draft Review. And so before we start, because I know a lot of people are here to speak to this, we just kind of wanted to go over the format for the presentation tonight. So staff will go over section by section of the presentation, and then the park board will have a chance as we go to discuss the items presented in section by section. And then after the full report's been presented and kind of discussed by park board, we'll open everything up to public comment. And prior to that, I'll just go over the rules again, because we want this to be a very respectful conversation, a respectful, we want this to be, I just keep respectful 3 times, so, and orderly. So I will put it over to Kelly to start with the master. The other thing I wanted to highlight before this is just, we are gathering feedback tonight. And again, I'll go over this when public comment opens up, but we're not making any decisions tonight. There's no votes tonight. This is just reviewing a draft of a master plan for Purgatory Park. So, okay.
Thank you, Chair. Appreciate it. First of all, I would just want to, as you probably look over here, you see a face that's not so familiar. So I just wanted to give you an idea of who we've got over here. Unfortunately, you've heard from Matt Kumka, our Park and Trail Planner, and Leslie Yetka, our Natural Resources Manager, on this topic before. Unfortunately, they're both out with medical issues tonight. So I will be co-presenting with the person to my right. His name is Jonathan Nelson. He's with Bolton and Mink. Bolton and Mink is the consultant that we are using. He's worked closely with Matt on this project. So us two will do our best to get through this presentation with Matt and Leslie out, and then Sarah and Darren are also here if they want to chime in or have any answers to questions, etc. So we will jump into the presentation. The first few slides are probably repeat for most of you. I think we want to just continue to go over the background and how we got here. You all probably remember our POST plan, our Parks, Open Space, and Trails Plan, which was approved back in 2022. That really kind of is a roadmap for the city. So it helps the staff members, it helps the council, it helps park board members, kind of figure out the improvements that we're going to make in our park system. One of the recommendations that came out of the POST plan was to start master planning parks. And so this park, Purgatory Park, was one of those that we decided to master plan, was first on our list. So that's why we're here. Again, we have contracted and hired Bolton and Mink as a consultant to help us with that. They've worked through this whole process for the past almost year. I think we started this back in March of 2023. Heavily community engagement. I think that started in June. I think we did about 5 months of community engagement. We had pop-up shops. We were at the farmers market. A survey was sent out. I think we had over 600 people respond to the survey. We had 1,000 people comment. So heavy community engagement for approximately 5 months. That ended in middle October. So in middle October, the outreach ended. We then compiled that feedback and presented that to you. Matt did in December. The following 2 meetings were the January and February meetings of this year, in which we presented preliminary strategies mostly geared towards dogs in parks, because that seemed to be the topic that was highest on the discussion. As of last week, last Thursday, February 29th, the Purgatory Park Draft Master Plan was put out online. So that is out right now, available for public comment. That will be out for a month, so we'll close public comment online on March 29th, 2024. Tonight is actually the first night that you've seen the draft master plan. So that's what we're hoping to get tonight, is feedback from you on what you think of the draft master plan. The final plan would then come back to you in May. We do not have an April meeting, so we will come back to you with put the public comments and any changes that we may have made based on your feedback. And then eventually it would go on to the City Council sometime likely in the summer of 2024. Chair, I think you kind of went over the plan for tonight, but the plan would be that myself and Jonathan will present these in sections. There's 6 different sections. After each section, we will pause to see if the Park Board has any comments or questions. And then after that, feel free to open it up to public comment. After public comment, Park Board will then have time to again provide feedback if they have more feedback. So the 6 sections. First one, introduction, inventory and analysis, and community engagement. The second section would be sense of place. Third is park access, specifically trails and parking, the Red Barn site, design standards, and dogs in park. So I will turn it over to Jonathan here for the rest of the presentation.
Great. Thanks, Kelly, and good evening, members of the Park Board. Appreciate the opportunity to be here and speak about the plan and the process. Really, the master planning process for Purgatory, like Kelly mentioned, it's been ongoing for about a year now. And it was really developed as kind of a 3-phased approach to this planning process. The first phase being what we coined as kind of launch. This is really kind of the internal planning piece of the master planning effort. Kind of meeting with city staff, developing kind of the overall master plan goals for the project. Looking at park inventory and conditions review, highlighting opportunities for park improvements, and developing engagement strategies. So as Kelly mentioned, engagement was a huge component of this master planning process, significant undertaking, and I commend the city for doing that. It's a very important part of the process and critical to make sure that we're capturing those voices from the public to make sure that it represents their, the ultimate plan reflects their wishes and desires. So going beyond the launch phase of the project, the 2 following phases, phase 2 is the engage piece, which again encompassed a pretty significant portion of the planning effort, as well as the project timeline. And then phase 3, where we are currently, is kind of that plan phase where we produce the draft master plan document, undergo the formal review process, and then ultimately finalize the deliverables. So looking a little deeper at that inventory and analysis process for the master plan, really this was about documenting the current park conditions, and this was accomplished largely through field visits to the park and meetings with city staff. So the first visit to the park was shortly after the project kicked off. We visited the park with city staff in April of 2023. There was still a bit of snow on the ground, a little different than this year, but it was a good opportunity to kind of walk the entirety of the site, not the entirety, but a good chunk of it, and understand what some of the issues that the city saw as far as maintenance, restoration, some of those major considerations related to the overall park, as well as understand some of the opportunities associated with the site. During the inventory and analysis process, we also reviewed and referenced a number of existing documents that had been produced with information pertinent to Purgatory Park. So that includes the Parks Open Space and Trails Plan, or the POST plan, that was adopted in 2022, and the Natural Resources Master Plan that was adopted in 2021. And really the ultimate goal of this phase was to identify priority areas of focus, and that's kind of what Kelly described previously, is kind of those 5 areas of focus, which is really sense of place, park access, both vehicular and pedestrian, the Red Barn site, design standards for the park, and dogs in the park. So with that, we'll kind of jump to phase 2 of this process, the community engagement process. And for this project, we really looked at undertaking what we call a 2-fold engagement process. Kelly kind of described it earlier, but really the aim of that is to engage as many folks as possible, capture as many voices and feelings about the park as possible. And so that incorporates both online and in-person engagement opportunities. So in total, we As far as online presence for this project, we had an online survey that was posted, I believe, for a duration of 3 months. That was available through the Minnetonka Matters website. In addition, folks were able to leave comments directly on the Minnetonka Matters website as well. And from that online effort, through the online survey, we collected 624 total survey responses. So it's a pretty good feedback, level of feedback as far as online surveys. We also hosted the 6 in-person engagement events, which included 2 formal community open houses and then 4 pop-up events that were held throughout the community. And from those in-person engagement events, we received over 1,000 written comments. So pretty significant, again, chunk of feedback that was received throughout this process. And as I kind of go through some of these engagement results, in this section, these results are kind of more general in nature, more about the park users and things that we observed. The feedback related to specific recommendations will come later in the recommendations section. So looking at community engagement, there was some interesting trends and results that we were able to capture. Specific to Purgatory, this one looks at how often people visit Purgatory Park, and what was very clear is that the people who are visiting the park are visiting often. 67% visited at least once a week, so reoccurring visitors, frequent visitors. Often these are local residents who are using the park, but also we heard from a number of folks who were non-residents or out-of-city park users. So a lot of people utilizing the park from outside the community as well. Looking at how people are accessing the park and where those people are coming from, again, a lot of the folks using the park are live in close proximity to the park. So 40% of respondents lived within a mile of the park. 64% of those people were accessing the park via automobile. And the most frequently used access point for the park was the primary entrance off Excelsior Boulevard. So some of the things that we noted about this, and this kind of ties back to the inventory and analysis phase as well, is the number of times that we visited the park. We observed and heard about significant potential parking shortages. When we visited, the parking lot was often full, so we utilized overflow parking areas. We also heard from folks that the primary parking lot was frequently used, was overflowing into the drive lane, and the Stadilla Road access was used quite heavily as well. And the only note about that, or one of the notes about that, is just the concerns as far as emergency vehicle access. The drive lane in the main access is fairly narrow, and the Stadilla Road turnaround, when there's vehicles parked there, it becomes very difficult for emergency vehicles to get access there. A few other notable results of the engagement process is, a lot of people go to the park to walk on the trails. Not a surprise there. Purgatory has a very robust trail system, and that includes both the maintained trails and informal footpaths in the woods and wetlands. A lot of people visited to utilize the park with their dogs, both leashed and off-leash dog users. Folks felt that the park maintenance was generally adequate, and park amenities as well were adequate, but could use some refreshing, and that's specific to some of the memorial benches, interpretive signage, wayfinding signage, park rule signage, things of that nature.
So that's the end of section 1. So back to the park board. If you have any questions or feedback regarding the park inventory or community engagement, we'd be happy to try to answer.
Can I just make a quick observation? If anyone standing in the back wants a seat, there's like 10 open seats in the front 2 rows, so if you're tired, it's a long meeting. Don't be shy.
I want to say thank you for doing this. I know engagement is difficult. It's nigh impossible to make sure everyone kind of has their voices heard in these sorts of things. And I know that's one of the most challenging parts when it comes to compiling public comment and public feedback. But I think you guys did an amazing job. I especially liked that you guys are out in the parks talking to people, because those are the people who are going to be the stakeholders in this, the people who use the parks every day. And that was another thing that stood, not just seeing everyone here, but also in the data, is that people love this park and people are passionate about this park, and I think that's a good thing. I think that's an important thing to kind of highlight as we move forward. So.
We can always move forward to section 2 if you prefer. Sounds good.
Okay. Yeah, so going back to kind of those focus areas of the plan, so as we move into the first one is the sense of place. And, you know, sense of place, you know, it's like, what is it, right? It's kind of hard to describe, but really it's the feel goods of the park, right? It's kind of the emotional and physical connection that people have to the park. It's kind of that bond that people have to the place. And it's, you know, Purgatory is a nature preserve. People really come here to be in nature, to convene in nature and experience wildlife, kind of wander the plant communities, right? So it's not you know, your traditional formal park that's heavily programmed. It's a unique feature. And the intention of the plan is really to reinforce those feelings, that sense of place, support opportunities for that passive recreation, exercise, walking, jogging, and biking. We heard from a lot of people throughout this process that the park's like a town square. It's a major gathering place for the community. And that's people doing different activities, whether that's dog walking, birding, restoration efforts. You know, it's kind of everything under the sun. People come there and convene with their friends. So ultimately, we want the plan to protect the natural resources and reinforce those natural resources, which is, you know, one of the primary goals of the park as a nature preserve. So looking at, you know, this section's really not as much, you know, concrete recommendations as it is kind of guidelines to maintaining the sense of place, right? So really looking at highlighting the park as an opportunity to experience solitude and an experience with nature, supporting use of the park for exercising, supporting the park as a community gathering place. As far as recommendations go, when we think about sense of place, oh, thank you, Kelly. You know, some of the things that the plan does do is adopt some design standards for the park related to park materials, construction details, really looking at kind of developing that materiality that speaks Purgatory Park. It also looks at developing appropriate interpretive signage and placement and messaging of those signage. So it incorporates design standards associated with signage for the park. And then ultimately just looking to identify, protect, and enhance some of those special places, historic features, overlooks, creek view sheds, things of that nature within the park.
So we're back to you, Park Board, if you have any questions or feedback on section 2, which is sense of place.
It's hard to disagree with wanting to keep the sense of place.
Yeah, I just want to reinforce the comment you made, Jonathan, about the sense of, I almost think it's a sense of community as much as sense of place. I'm on my 4th Golden in the park. I think I've been going for 25 years, and there is a real sense of community among all the people who use the park, particularly I think among the dog walkers, whether they congregate in the prairie area or they're out back in the woods. And it's a special place that way. It's also, I think, a special place because of, as you said, it's not programmed, which in non-park development phraseology means there's not playgrounds, there's not organized activities. It's really just there for people to experience on their own. And I think that is a key component of the park. Thank you.
I would just like to add that I love the tension of taking care of nature and allowing space. Things aren't always black and white, and so to create a space that protects both of those things to really enhance sense of belonging, I think is an important thing to think about in this planning process.
All right, I think we can move on to the next section.
Great. Thank you. And I should mention too, you'll note that we don't get into a significant amount of detail with this. We're trying to keep it relatively time sensitive and assume that folks have had a chance to review the document in full. So we don't get into a lot of detail, but if there's questions about anything, feel free. So the next area of focus is park access, and that includes both pedestrian and vehicular traffic, so trails and parking. When we think about access to the park, there's really, from the pedestrian perspective, there's really two types of trails within the park, right? There's the primary trails. Those are generally actively maintained by the city. Those incorporate aggregate trail surfacing, where slopes are generally a little less steep, and then bituminous surfacing, where slopes are a little steeper and erosion is a concern. Those paths are generally 8 to 10 feet wide throughout the park, and again are maintained throughout the year by the city. And then the park also has the informal trail system, which is a pretty extensive system that has kind of developed and expanded over time throughout the park and the natural areas. These are generally just footpaths, unmaintained for the most part, dirt or native tread, and kind of extend throughout the park. They've spread over time. What we've seen and through our site visits and through discussions with city is, you see a lot of starting to see a lot of redundancies with these informal trail systems. Multiple trails that branch off and lead to the same place, and that's causing degradation of some of those natural areas. And so, part of this was looking at opportunities to kind of consolidate some of those informal trails throughout the park and remove some of those redundant connections. And then also, a lot of trails have developed on steep slopes, for example, leading directly straight down a hillside, something that is generally not a maintainable trail over time, right? You're going to get a lot of washouts, a lot of erosion to those trails. So looking in key areas at potential to realign some of those connections too, if necessary. We also looked at, through the design standards, standardizing trail maintenance practices. So looking at what that typical trail cross-section looks like. Should the edge be a mown edge? Should it be native that's allowed to kind of come right up to the trail? So we looked at standardizing some of those trail maintenance practices throughout the park as well. And then looking at developing clear and consistent trail mapping and wayfinding. So just helping people navigate the park. Again, it's a pretty extensive trail system. So just helping folks navigate around and through the park. When it comes to vehicular access, we kind of talked a little bit about some of the safety concerns as far as vehicular access. Some of the outcomes of the project were, just recommending a further study of Stadola Road cul-de-sac for a safe and accessible vehicular parking lot. We did include some high-level concepts for both Stadola and the main parking lot access. These are, again, high-level planning exercises kind of intended to assist with future planning efforts. We assume that these will require significant study to formalize. Considering an enhancement of the main parking lot and trail accesses and incorporating with those through the design standards opportunities for green infrastructure. We observed in several instances during our site visits issues with ponding water in the existing parking lot, from winter runoff, standing ice, things of that nature. So looking at opportunities for introducing permeable pavers, for example, or other best management practices adjacent to parking lots. And again, the concepts that were generated and included with the concept plan really intended to facilitate additional planning and design efforts in the future.
board, any comments, questions, feedback on trails and parking?
I can start. I'm super supportive of enhancing the main parking lot. Summer weekends are horrible, and I've backed out, done crazy 3-point turns to try and get out of the full parking lot many, many times. So appreciate that. And then regarding how we name trails is kind of a pet peeve for me. Right now they're called maintained and non-maintained trails in the signage, and I think that's super confusing for the average citizen what that means. I noticed like 3 different ways in the master plan draft document to name the trails. So I would ask the team to make a recommendation decision, and probably a recommendation first to bring to us how we should reference the primary or informal, maintained, non-maintained. There was improved, non-improved. There were so many different options. We need to be consistent in this document and consistent in our signage and as a team as we talk about them, because it's important as we start talking about rules for dogs down the road. We need to be really clear on the 2 different types of trails in this park.
Yeah, thank you for pointing that out. Well, that's something that will get corrected.
Thanks.
Yeah, thank you.
I had a question about mowing. I've noticed quite a lot of mowing on both sides of the paths, the maintained paths in Purgatory, and I'm assuming it's to keep the vegetation from encroaching into the humans so that people don't feel like they're going to touch plants. But personally, I'd prefer less mowing, although maybe it's easier to just mow the width of the mower. But so can you talk a little bit more about mowing? And then I have one more question.
Sure. So yeah, we have a flail mower on the back of a John Deere tractor. Cuts the grass to about 6 to 8 inch height, roughly. That's what the goal is. Depending on uneven ground, sometimes it's shorter, sometimes it's taller. Reaches out 4 to 6 feet wide. So the reason we do it is just to keep that tall vegetation from crowding in, and where the trails are 8 feet, 9 feet wide, they don't get to be a 6-foot trail or whatever. So people can see if somebody's on a bike, you have better visibility. You know, dog goes running out or something, you can see a little bit better, whatever. Deer, anything. And then we mow generally only twice a year. We get through the city. Sometimes, depending on weather, we'll maybe give it a 3rd cut. But so generally, we mow twice a year.
Okay, and then my second question, in the comments, I, rather to my surprise, saw a couple people suggesting that the trails should be wider, and I didn't know if anybody who was out collecting comments from the public understood what that was all about. To me, they seem wide enough, but do you know can you add any more color to those comments?
No, I guess I'm not sure. I mean, we maintain them with an 8-foot wide. The gravel trails are an 8-foot wide bar to groom the gravel. So we generally try to keep it that wide. Try to do it once a year. If we don't mow it, then again the weeds grow in the gravel and we lose that trail width. But we're not widening them or anything like that. The asphalt trails obviously are 8 feet and don't go anywhere. But
And the 8 feet is so that you can get vehicles down them, right?
correct. Yep, and space, for if somebody's on a bike and then if somebody's walking, there's room for people to get past each other, step aside, whatnot, just so there's plenty of room for everybody to get through on the trails.
A couple questions. Since we were talking about the trail part, just a curiosity. Some of the asphalt sections, which I think are there primarily because to minimize erosion, are really in need of repair. They're not repairing those won't. The master plan timetable isn't affecting our normal maintenance in the park. Question? That's a question.
Not really. I guess the I don't foresee that we have really any big changes planned for the asphalt.
Yeah.
You know, but most likely we would just overlay what's existing there now.
Okay.
So, and that's something that we do with our crews and would do similar to what we did at Lone Lake Park last year, just do
Yeah.
an 8-foot overlay.
And then I just wanted to compliment the parking concepts. I know you're describing them as concepts for now, but the concept at the main parking in terms of the additional spaces and the cutouts for the parallel parking along the entryway, I think are great. I really like the redesign of Stadola. I recognize that's a challenge because the homeowners along Stadola Road are concerned about traffic. I frankly think they're going to have traffic whether they have a bad cul-de-sac or a nice parking area, so I'm in favor of improving that, but that's a bigger decision. But I wanted to compliment the team on providing more access for everyone to be in a safe spot. And I guess one other thing I'll throw out, just as an aside, certainly not this year, but in some years, it's really interesting watching people try to navigate the dip right before you come up to the parking lot when it's been icy. And I'm not sure if that's a maintenance issue, trying to get someone in sanding sooner, or if we actually go to the effort of parallel parking stuff and things, if the dip could be raised a bit, because a lot of times people may seem hard to believe, but they can't get up that last part to get into the parking lot when it's early in the plow time. So anyway, it's been a nice job.
Great, thank you.
Can I say, I think the idea of putting in permeable pavers is really cool, and it would be a good way to introduce that whole concept to the rest of the city. So let's do that. Although I know it's expensive.
All right, I think we can move on to the Red Barn site.
Okay. Yeah, thank you. So the next focus area is the Red Barn site. So this is a site, just adjacent to Excelsior Boulevard. It's in the main parking lot access. It's about 1.23 acres in size, and this is a property that the city acquired several years ago. It does house the kind of iconic Red Barn structure that a lot of people identify as an important landmark in the city, something that people just know about. The barn was evaluated and deemed to have some fairly significant structural concerns, so some pretty significant engineering work would need to be done if that was to be salvaged. But as part of the engagement process, we collected feedback about what people felt, should be done with the site. And so I'm just going to skip ahead here just to kind of highlight some of the feedback from the engagement process. Top uses that people identified for the Red Barn site, 61% of respondents we're interested in some sort of a public facility. We heard a lot about an environmental, climate, or nature center specifically. 48% identified a nature playground, 36% picnic space, 28% trailhead, 19% fenced-in dog area, and 17% additional parking. So quite an array of uses that people were interested in exploring for the site. So going back here, one of the formal recommendations that we have is simply just to incorporate the site into Purgatory Park. So currently they're two separate parcels. You just incorporate that Red Barn site into Purgatory so that it just for consistency and ease of maintenance and things of that nature. Another recommendation is just to study the redevelopment as far as it relates to a public facility. Again, we heard significant feedback about that concept. It's obviously a significant undertaking, so it would require quite a planning effort, quite a study to see, could this city support a facility such as that? Is there interest? Is there, potential partners, things of that nature. So it's kind of beyond the scope of this project, but just a recommendation that we wanted to identify based on the feedback that was received. And then based on feedback from that, in coordination with city staff, we also developed several, similar to the parking lots, we developed kind of several scenarios for the Red Barn site. The first based on, that desire for a climate and nature center potentially, or some public use building. So this identifies kind of incorporating that into the hillside that slopes down towards Purgatory, as well as incorporating additional parking for both the park, the nature center, and to accommodate potentially a trailhead for that future Excelsior Boulevard trail. So that was one concept. We also evaluated another concept. It's not shown on here, but it's without the nature center, what are some development potentials for that? Focusing more on a trailhead facility, additional parking, and potentially some stormwater best management practice facilities in conjunction with the Excelsior Drive project.
All right, Park Board, any questions or feedback on the Red Barn site?
There was a recommendation to look at it again, and I didn't know if you meant to review its structural integrity again, or to review what else might be done. I was under the impression that it's on its last leg, and I didn't know that it would, I didn't understand the value of spending more money to have it looked at again.
Yeah, that's a great point, and I think certainly something that we could look at as an alternative. I think the thought there is just if that analysis is done, just confirm that it's accurate, up to date, and ultimately that barn is structurally unsound to.
So it's healed itself?
Well,
sorry,
I can't say that, but appreciate the feedback on that one.
That's what I was going to ask is like just for a refresher on the condition, or if it's just left standing with nothing, is it structurally unsound?
So just a little info on the analysis that was done was a little more of a broader view, wide-ranging overall look of the barn, and not a great deal was put into really analyzing the costs and the different things that it would take to really look at, okay, the east wall has been reinforced over time, so what would it really take to fix that? So it was the things that needed to be repaired were generally identified, but a deeper dive into exactly what all it would take to do the fixes for, this use A, use B, use C hasn't been done to really fully say this is what could be done with this amount of money, or this amount of money, or this amount of money. So there could be a little more detailed look at the barn if desired.
So we don't really know how much it would cost to make it something you could heat.
Not with really any great confidence or detail at this, with what we have so far.
I concur with the whatever the terminology is of transferring into the park, the parcel. That makes absolute sense. I kind of have a thing for old barns, so it would be great if there's some way that could be remain standing, and better yet, remain standing and used. I think that sounds probably pretty unlikely. So if that's the case, I hope we do use the initial input from this planning effort to really think outside the box of how we might use that site besides just a parking at a trailhead. Because obviously, if we did something significant, then that's all kind of budgetary and staffing issues. Like some people, I think, get commented in the comment section about the Westwood Nature Center in St. Louis Park, which is fantastic. But I personally have scratched my head how we don't have anything like that in Minnetonka in terms of staffing and support and investment. So I'm not sure if that would be a whole new kind of thing. And I'm not sure if that's what we're up for that. But I do think that location is so visible from Excelsior Boulevard, and it's the gateway into the park. And doing something notable there would be great. As well as I'll put a plug in this later in the meeting too, but as well as leveraging that space to its, I guess technically it'd be, well, it's to its east, I'll say, along Excelsior Boulevard to the firehouse. That ridge line is great. There's some informal like deer path or footpaths up there now, you know, some what ifs if there was a loop put up there that would take off pressure in the center of the park. That would be might be an interesting thing to explore.
All right, I think we can move on to the next section.
Okay, thank you. So the next focus area is the design standards for the park. And we looked at a number of items related to the design standards. The first one being the trail system. So we did look at, again, kind of the formal and informal trails. Beyond just kind of identifying those typical cross sections and treatments for the trails themselves and the buffers. We also kind of looked at identifying a trail development process. So as you look at, you know, like you mentioned, expanding potentially the trail system up on that ridge line or other things of that nature, identifying the people who should be involved in that process, considerations for alignments of the trail, kind of guidelines for appropriate slopes of trails, things of that nature. In addition to that, we also looked at considerations related to longevity, accessibility, and maintenance needs associated with the trails, and helping to identify those. All the design standards incorporate kind of unit costs and anticipated life cycles for the various features, so can kind of help with that planning and kind of long-range consideration of the expansion of the trail system and budgeting for those appropriately. We also looked at structures related to pedestrian movement through the park, so it's specifically bridges. You know, there's several bridge crossings through the park, and so identifying, you know, what those bridges should look like as replacement is warranted, as well as stairs through the park, so areas where maybe slope is a concern and a standard trail can't be accommodated, looking at opportunities to incorporate some lower impact stair installations. And lastly, in areas of the park that frequently flood or are wet, looking at opportunities for boardwalks in place of just at-grade trails. We also looked at the memorial features in the site. So we heard a lot of feedback about the memorials. Are there enough benches? Are there too many benches? Placement of those. On site, we observed, you know, they're kind of just, there's not a rhyme or reason necessarily to how those are placed in relation to the trail, for example. Some benches don't have direct trail connectivity, so they're not really accessible to a lot of folks. So we looked at kind of developing a standard for, you know, how far offset from the trail those should be placed, what the surface should be underneath those, if they need a retaining wall around them, what that should look like, things of that nature. And then also just providing, ensuring that, you know, benches are appropriately spaced through the park, and provide opportunities for seating at kind of some of those key areas of the park. When it comes to the memorial trees, kind of underwent a similar process. And I think, you know, some of the recommendations in the design standards are about coordinating with necessary city staff to ensure that, you know, tree species selections related to those memorial trees align with the goals for the park and the natural resources management regimes that are being undertaken in the park. So, you know, for example, you don't have a tree that can't tolerate fire in a prairie, right? Things like that. And then the other design standard we looked at was related to signage. So the city has developed a very nice kind of robust sign package for each of the various types of signs that may be necessary throughout the city. And so we pulled the ones that were appropriate for Purgatory Park into the document so that they're readily accessible. These include things like interpretive signage for some of those special places within the park, wayfinding signage, and some of those entry signage opportunities that may incorporate park rules, things of that nature.
Park Board, any feedback on Section 5 design standards?
I wanted to say that I found this section of the plan really interesting. I thought there were so many interesting ideas. I think the trail development process is so thorough and detailed. It makes it so easy for you guys to actually figure out how to add more trails if necessary, because it's got this really great process. So I really liked that. I'm really interested in the idea of a boardwalk into the wetlands. I moved here from Florida, where most of our parks have some sort of boardwalk scenario, and we spent a majority of our time interacting with nature in that way without hurting nature because we were above it. So I would love to see us explore the idea of a boardwalk in the wetland area. I think that would be really interesting. I also thought that the signage is going to be really great. I think the signs look amazing, and they're going to make it so clear for whether it has to do with dogs, whether it has to do with directional signs. They're all really great, and because they're all so cohesive and they all look the same, it's really going to elevate the way the park looks. So I'm really excited about that. The one question I did have was talking about the memorial benches, and obviously there's concern, is there too many, are there not enough? I was wondering if anybody had thought about doing memorial pavers, maybe in the front of the park as you're entering, and so people could then purchase a small paver that, you know, memorializes their loved one. And that would be a nice, really interesting entrance to the park where everybody could sort of see that, and there's the opportunity to have many there. So you could kind of, and that would also help with just, you know, sidewalks in general. So I didn't know if that was a thought.
It wasn't discussed specifically, but I think that is a great point to explore, you know, potentially other opportunities for memorials. You know, not everybody is in the market for a bench, for example, or wants to, you know, undertake a tree that, you know, is, you know, maybe not as permanent or has risk of failure. So I think that's a good idea, and something that could be explored further if that's of interest.
Thank you.
I agree with the comments about the signs. I've always felt that for how beautiful Purgatory is, our signs are terrible. You know, there's a lot of age to them. Some of them are rusted. There was a sign at the bottom of the hill over by the, I call them the telescope, but it's, I guess, binoculars, that it was falling down forever. I think it's finally either been removed or fallen down. So I like the idea of the city's new package of signs being utilized in the park. I think that will be, as Corey said, a really big improvement. I had never thought about the pavers before. It's interesting. I know that I think it's like $1,000 to do or so to do a memorial bench, which is a, you know, a not insignificant investment. I have a feeling that a lot of people would love to memorialize their dog, and the idea of a little memorial spot for pavers for dogs would probably be, I know I'd buy 3. So anyways, that's a great idea.
Okay. I think we can move on to the last section.
Okay. So yeah, the last section, or focus area of the master plan was the dogs in the park. And, you know, obviously this is a very popular subject throughout this process. A bulk of the feedback that we've received throughout the process is specific to this focus area. And so we pulled just a few snapshots from the online survey just to kind of help convey that message that, this is a very popular subject, but it's also a very dividing subject, right? And there's folks on both sides of the issue. And so as we look at the recommendations, we're looking at, opportunities for compromise to make this a usable space for everybody, right? So looking at that first slide there, this was a couple questions that were asked in the online survey. So the first question there, you can see a significant portion of folks felt that either strongly disagree or somewhat disagree that the dog ordinance should be changed to not allow dogs to run off leash in the park. So it was 64% of folks felt that way about that question. And then looking at the next question, the off-leash park rules are appropriate and should not be changed. 66% of respondents strongly or somewhat agree with that statement. When we get to the bottom there, another question that was asked is, or statement was, off-leash dogs are a safety concern in the park. And with that question, we saw 43% of respondents strongly agree or somewhat agree that off-leash dogs are a safety concern in the park. So you can start to see that, there is, kind of both sides of the aisle to that issue. Going to the next page, another question that was asked, things that discourage park usage. You can see, 47% of responses to this question indicated the presence of off-leash dogs was something that discouraged them from using the park. One item to note with this question specifically, I mentioned there were 624 responses to the survey. This question only received 418 responses, so there was folks who didn't answer this question. So just wanted to throw that out there that, this question did not receive everybody's response. So with that, let's see. I'm going to pull up this figure. You might remember at the previous meeting, this figure looked a little different. The last round of the figure really looked at identifying an area of the park where off-leash activity would be allowed, and kind of and that was kind of that area to the east of Purgatory Creek. It was about a 14-acre area that was identified as a potential area for off-leash activity. Based on feedback from Park Board at that meeting, kind of reconfigured this figure. And so what's shown now is really, where off-leash dog activity would be allowed based on the current city ordinance. So what it does is the areas of red are the areas where off-leash activity wouldn't be permitted. It's generally the formal trail system or the primary trail system. The parking lots, areas that are actively undergoing intensive restoration and management practices. And then a buffer around the perimeter of the park adjacent to private property. So really this is, the intent with this figure now is, we're not prescribing where dogs are allowed in the park, right? We want to show, based on current ordinance, these are the areas where off-leash dogs are allowed. The areas in red are the areas where, people would need to leash their dogs. And then the recommendations for each of the sections are kind of broken up into short, mid, and long-term recommendations. Just for reference, when we talk about short-term, we're talking about 1 to 3 year recommendations. Mid-term is 3 to 5 years, and long-term is 5+ years. So the short-term recommendations identified in the plan, again, are to review current off-leash ordinance language, more clearly define the current rules in the park to better ensure compliance and reduce unwanted interactions. So that's really kind of that figure that was presented on the previous slide. Just making that clearer to folks. Adding additional waste stations throughout the park to minimize the amount of dog waste left on site. And then review natural resources impacts, including soil disturbance and erosion for future maintenance and reestablishment, while minimizing park use disturbance. Looking at mid and long-term recommendations, considering mitigating conflict areas where dogs and other park goers interact using landscaping to limit sightlines and potentially in key areas, temporary fencing or informal trail recirculation. Repairing and formalizing key connections between the parking lots and highly used dog areas. And then considering a citywide dog park strategy, including fenced in off-leash areas. And just a note on that, that's we anticipate that's a significant undertaking, would involve intensive study, engagement, things of that nature, and kind of future capital improvement planning.
All right, Park Board, back to you for comments, questions, feedback.
Yeah, I'd say thanks for taking our considerations last time and kind of pushing out something new here. And I think it's really important, and you hit it on the head, to say making this a park that everyone can utilize. How do we mesh that together? So I appreciate that.
I just want to echo, I appreciate some of the clarity. I think it's really important as we talk about signage and maps and making it clear so people know what to expect from a space. I think I heard last meeting, I missed, but I was watching, a lot of people want voice command. They want their dogs to be under control. So I appreciate their space to say, hey, all of us need to work together to create this space. All of us need to keep the maintained trails. I think like clear is kind. And so if the expectations are very clear, this is the area where they need to be leashed, then we all need to hold each other accountable to those areas and hold it to us so we can continue to use the space while also protecting. If an area, volunteers spent many hours working on nature restoration so that we can continue to use that space, I think clearly labeling it and making it known is something all of us can agree to. We want to keep this place natural. We want to keep this place beautiful. And so I think this idea of like clear, is kind. And so I appreciate a lot of the intentionality that went around signage and mapping and hearing what the community has said, while also saying I think we can all work together to create a park that works for many people and dogs in a way that's cohesive and like we've all said, like a community hub. And part of being a community is like working together to uphold those clear standards. So thank you.
I'd like to clarify what we're saying in the plan. So when we say short-term recommendations, 1 to 3 years, we're saying within 1 to 3 years, these things will happen.
Correct. Yep.
Okay, so then within 3 to 5 years, the midterm recommendations will happen.
Correct.
Within 5+ years, the long-term recommendations will happen.
Yes.
So to my understanding, when I read this, there is nothing in the language here that says anything about removing off-leash areas from purgatory.
Correct.
Okay. So then also what we're saying is, so when we read this document, when we talk about creating an off-leash dog park, we are saying that within 5 years from now, we will discuss creating a dog park somewhere.
Correct.
Okay.
Yes, as they're laid out. That's.
I just wanted to make that clear, that what is in the document is what we are discussing tonight. We are not making any recommendations to remove a dog park, to abolish a dog park, to ban a dog park. We are not doing any of that tonight.
Correct.
Off leash, excuse me. Thank you. That's all I wanted to say.
It's got several comments, a couple questions maybe. I'm appreciative of the change in approach from our discussion in February around the wooded areas and I guess maintaining the spaces that are currently off leash. I personally believe there's absolutely no way you can change that without a change in the city ordinance. And I think that's what ultimately protected the off leash position 15 or so years ago when this same issue came up. The city ordinance and the park board regulation follows it, makes it pretty difficult to say, unless you were to put signs everywhere saying, you must be leashed. more fundamentally, I like it because I think the unique nature of the park, and for me, particularly the wooded section on the ridge and to the south, your map's sideways, but yeah, to the south, is really special. Getting really specific on, I didn't bring this up on the trail part because I figured we'd see this map. I like the trails that you're proposing to change or close in the wooded areas that are kind of redundant, that may lead to erosion. I think there's actually a couple of hairpins in there that are actually should be closed off too, because you got a straight shot up and 10 feet away you got a hairpin, and you probably should have the hairpin, not the straight shot. I am curious about in the buffer areas. I understand. I like the idea of protecting the little hilltop that's undergoing major restoration on the east side, or the top of this map. I am curious, so I tracked with the buffers, but the one buffer I'm not sure about is the one that's shown on your map to the extreme right, which is the south end along the creek. Because yeah, to the right-hand side, the buffer, which I understand is for lot lines, is actually along the creek, and there's a really nice trail along portion of the creek that you can't, unless the city property extends well on the other side of the creek. Basically, you wouldn't be able to walk along the creek there if it's a 50-foot buffer. So that's the one. Number one, there's a creek dividing the property owners in the park, so I'm not sure we need a buffer. And secondly, it'd be hard to walk. You'd be shutting off a section there that's fairly popular now. So that's a question. My other question was, and Matt helped answer this, I was also concerned about if you look at the, if the map goes back up, if you look at the center of the park, the trails that go from the center section down into the creek in the wetlands are grayed out, which indicates they're being removed. And I asked Matt about that because number one, that's a pretty interesting area. Two, it takes load off the center trail. And actually, Corey had a good idea. If you were to put boardwalks in, they'd be down there. And Matt explained to me that technically those trails do not exist because they're in the DNR wetland, and so the city can't officially acknowledge the presence of trails there, maintain or supply them. So they're not there. And so I'm bringing that up because I was concerned about that, and there's maybe some people in the room, and it's probably best if no more questions are asked about those. But I like this. The one last question is, I've been up there. It's not used a lot, but on the map now we're going to the extreme left, and there's technically from a geography perspective, it'd be the northwest extreme corner along Excelsior Boulevard. You've pinked that all out, and there really are no trails up there. I've been up there snowshoeing, so I know you can kind of get up there. So it's unmaintained, not preserved, so presumably, according to our regulations, we could go up there. Is that grayed out because of it's got high restoration natural value, or is it just no one goes up there, so you didn't think about that?
Yeah, the intention there is to show that area due to its active restoration.
Okay.
Active restoration efforts in that area. Yep.
Great. And the only other last thing would be is I think, because I guess if this is the dog section, this would be where to bring it up. There were some really good suggestions mailed in after the last meeting about signage. And I really, and both about the inconsistencies throughout our park system about language, as well as trying to make it as clear as possible. And I think as part of that, the signs focus on trying to help people understand the off-leash component. I think we need to increase the component around dogs must be on leash. I mean, boom. And when you're on the maintained trail, just periodically dogs must be on leash here because that's what they have to be, versus kind of trying to explain what's going on, and there's even graphics you can use. I know Three Rivers Park has a a dog with a line through it or whatever. I think that would be beneficial, because my last point is I think safety is a big deal, and I'm a passionate dog lover, but I don't discount that 47 or whatever it was % are discouraged coming to the park. I don't discount the fact that in the Post survey, across all of our parks, 20% of the people feel unsafe in our parks because of off-leash dogs. They don't feel discouraged, they don't feel safe. And in this survey, I think there was 23% who didn't feel safe in the parks. And that's important. People should be able to be safe in the parks. So I think clarifying the signage, maybe self-regulation among the users to kind of feel that they can speak up and say, hey, you can leash your dog here, not there. And I do still support the concept of, not in the midterm, but because that 3 to 5 years could be 5 years, and even 3 years feels too long with the safety issues. I do believe that along the, your map confuses me because it's twisted, but along the East Main Trail is where the primary areas of issue are, particularly at the bottom where you exit the center to get down across the creek. There is no distance between the trails because the trails intersect, and along this little bend that's in the road, in the trail, the main trail, it's probably within 20 feet of the informal trail. And I think it wouldn't necessarily have to be a continuous buffer, but I think there's some key periodic spots that would really benefit having some form of discouragement. In the summer, it's kind of less of an issue because right now it's just all flat, but in the summer everything grows up. And so the dogs in the center don't necessarily see the dogs on the perimeter trail. But right now, it happens all the time. And for people who say that nothing ever happens in the park, you can talk to the doctor who got taken down off his bike on the trail and broke his hip. And there's a lot of comments in the free-form section of the survey where people really are concerned for their safety, for their dogs on leash, for their kids, for the ability to feel safe in the park. So I think it's incumbent on us to do everything we can. If to preserve the ability to have the dogs off leash, we need to do everything we can to maximize the possibility for people to feel safe in the park.
Dave, you hinted at it. I'm a dog lover who is concerned, as you are, Dave, about the safety concerns of many people in the park, which is why I asked my question. The midterm recommendations right now, 3 to 5 years, there were 2 of them in yellow that you can't read on the map. 1, mitigate points of conflict between off-leash and on-leash dogs or other park users, and 2, formalize connections between the parking lot and primary trail. I'm curious why those are on the midterm 3 to 5 year list and not the 1 to 3 year list.
Yeah, appreciate the question. Certainly something that could be shifted if it's a park board priority or you feel that it should be accomplished sooner.
Was there rationale behind it that we should know?
Great question. Right. Yeah, we can follow up with that information, but nothing to my knowledge, no.
I had one question about the signage that we were going to create. We had talked in the previous meeting about creating potentially more signage around the perimeter of the maintained trail. When I look at this map, I see that we're talking about putting park rules at each major entry point, and then it's notated that there are 2 different new park rules signs at different entrances. I believe these are probably close to where the entrance to the dog area is. I'm wondering if, one, could we have more signage? I still feel like we need more signage in other areas around the trail to echo what Dave was saying about having clarity on the signs of saying this is an on-leash area, your dog must be leashed in this area, just to make that perfectly clear to everybody. And then also, I don't know if it's possible for us to have, not approval, but visibility to when the signs are created, to see the wording of them, to make sure that what we're asking for is being clearly identified in the signs. I don't know if that's within our purview or if that's something that we need to leave to the city, but I do feel like if we're trying to make sure that one of our key points is that we want to make sure that the signage is clear, I feel like that's something that we'll need to have visibility to once the signs are in the process of being created.
Yeah, I think that'd be something pretty easily. We could, once we get to that point, to put things into place to develop a signage plan that would show a little more detail of where all the different types of signs would be installed, whether it's, X amount of spacing or calling out specifically on a map where each type of sign would be and what the language would be.
Perfect. Thanks, Darren.
And adding to that, around the border between residents, if we can increase or look at signage for that as well, because that's an issue.
I did like in the plan where it said, excuse me, maybe there was ways to incorporate more signage without having more signs, like putting them on different objects around the park so that they're not so in your face. We don't want to take away from the beauty of the park by having a million signs, but at the same time we want to make sure that we're communicating the rules of the park. And so if there are ways to create signs without creating signs, that would probably be good too.
And I guess I'll load on one more sign thing since it's popped in my head, but in the map, the upper right-hand corner of your map where it's a hard hairpin, where the park lot backs up to the Stadola Road, there's 3 or 4 homeowners there who have extraordinarily deep lots that actually, a lot of people, if you're in the woods there, think they're in the park, but they're on their lots. And they've asked the city to place signs there to help reinforce the fact that it's private property. And there's been reluctance since we haven't done an actual survey to be able to do that, or words to that effect. But if we can draw a line on this map and create a buffer, we ought to be able to put a sign up. And there are signs along in Big Willow on the north side of the park where the trail backs up pretty close to some homeowners that do look like Minnetonka City signs that indicate you're entering, this is the park boundary. So there is a precedent, from my perspective, of walking through Big Willow for those kind of signs. And I know that the people who live up there would be very appreciative of some more official kind of signing, because for the few people that go up there, it's kind of confusing.
Yeah, come on.
Pretty much I agree with everything that everybody said, so thank you for all your good ideas. I have a question about the red areas that would be on leash, and I'm assuming since there are some that are set aside because that are red because they're under conservation, under restoration, that if another area becomes under conservation, that could also be signed and be an on leash only or a keep out until the plants come up area. This isn't permanent, that it's somewhat of a living thing, that the boundaries can shift a bit if there's a new area that gets restored. Or let's say I would like to propose that will be the case.
Yeah, I think that's a great question, and something that maybe we can have Matt follow up on.
Fair enough. I just, if this is going to last for 3 years, I'm not sure the restoration people want to promise that this is all they're going to do.
Right.
And then
Point.
you made a comment about informal trail recirculation. Does that mean making them go away? I mean, are you talking about closing trails?
Yeah,
I didn't know what
yes.
recirculation meant in that. If it was a library book, I'd get that. But I didn't know what you meant.
Yeah, maybe a poor choice of wording, but yeah, essentially it kind of doubles with the trail recommendations previously that, just look at opportunities to consolidate some of those informal trails, and especially at some of those conflict points where there may be multiple trails converging. So.
Okay. Do you guys have any more, or next steps?
Yeah, next steps, and I kind of talked about this earlier, but the draft master plan is up on Minnetonka Matters for another 3 or 4 weeks till March 29th. We will come back to the May meeting with that feedback, summarize that feedback and a final plan, and then likely the park board would recommend this to the city council here still this year. So those would be the next steps.
Okay. At this point, we will open public comment, but prior to that, I just kind of wanted to highlight a couple things. So we welcome your feedback. We're glad everyone's here, and I think this, like we mentioned before, this just goes to show the investment in the city and in our parks. But one thing that we really want to highlight is, as I was rambling on before, please be respectful to the board, to staff, and everybody in attendance. We want everyone to feel safe and comfortable when they're speaking, and part of that is no clapping, no applause, no whistling, no stamping of feet. Last time there was booing, commenting from the audience. That all deters people from coming up here and speaking. We want everyone to feel welcome and everyone to be able to feel heard. And it's a brave thing to be able to come up here and speak in front of all these people. And when people applaud, it drowns that out, and it makes people not want to come up. And we just can't have that. And when you're
Because the current design is really maximizing the benefits of off-leash dog walking. The unmaintained trails encourage human physical activity. They offer a community gathering space, and they give options for minimal interaction by allowing walkers to use the less traveled footpaths. So if you have a dog that's not in the mood to play, you can just take the Sumac Trail and kind of bypass the main area. There was a government survey done in Canada that looked at dog parks, and it said park features, this is a quote, park features such as a linear or walk-through design deter sedentary behavior by encouraging dog owners to walk alongside their dogs. And the report also says, quote, off-leash dog parks increased socialization with neighbors and created a heightened sense of community. I think confining like all the off-leash dog walkers to just a few fenced-in acres in a corner of the park would take away all the things that people love about that space.
My name is Dr. Dennis Yockers, PhD, and I reside at 3648 Hazelmore Place, Minnetonka. My wife and I have been residents of the city for almost 11 years, and one of the reasons that we moved to Minnetonka was because of its high-quality natural resources and its focus on its management. I appreciate the work and effort that the city has put forth in the development of the Purgatory Park Master Plan draft. I would like to thank the Park Board and the city for the opportunity to provide comments on the master plan. For 33 years, I was employed by the State of Wisconsin Department of Natural Resources and College of Natural Resources, University of Wisconsin-Stevens Point, with my career focusing on natural resources management and education. For the past 11 years, I've been advising and volunteering with the city on a variety of natural resources issues, including the post-plan, natural resources management plan, sustainability, and community resilience. In the introduction of the draft master plan, Purgatory Creek is considered a community preserve with a special emphasis on protecting and restoring the park's natural features. The phrase community preserve is utilized throughout the plan. This special emphasis as a nature preserve is also highlighted throughout the post-plan and the Natural Resources Management Plan. Purgatory Park has been categorized as having some of the highest ecological values and biological diversity found in Minnetonka parks. For more than a decade, the city has been involved in the restoration and management of the ecological and natural resources features of Purgatory Park. This work has been supported by countless hours from volunteers and other organizations. Since the post and natural resources plans have been initiated, along with supporting city funding, the natural resources management work at the park has intensified regarding the restoration of ecological functions and biological diversity. The draft plan identifies several key issues that need to be more thoroughly studied to determine the direction, activities, and amenities that Purgatory Park will offer in the future. One of the main issues in the park are the human uses in the park, including dog walking and other passive activities, and their impacts on the environmental sustainability and natural resources restoration efforts. An integral component in the development of any park master plan involves an intensive environmental assessment of the current conditions and issues, along with an environmental assessment of any proposed recommendations. The issue regarding dog walking along with off-leash dog areas in the park is a major issue pointed out in the plan that needs to be researched and investigated in a timelier fashion and greater depth. The current draft does not contain an adequate environmental assessment of the dog issue and its impact on the park. This assessment needs to be conducted utilizing accepted scientific research protocols. The scientific research regarding the impact of dogs in natural areas and parks identifies significant impacts on the biological integrity and natural resources of these areas. Throughout the park plan, the need to have a clear direction on the management of dogs in public places is stressed. The assessment of the dog issue and a strategic plan is also recommended in the post plan. My recommendation is this comprehensive assessment and development of a strategic plan related to dogs, along with adequate funding and staff, begin as soon as possible for all city parks and public properties. This strategic plan will guide any development of park master planning in the future. The Purgatory Park Master Plan draft is a wonderful beginning to the process of the plan. Greater discussion on the park plan needs to take place, which utilizes the post and natural resources plans to demonstrate its connections. The final plan for Purgatory Park should emphasize the major goal of preserving the natural biodiversity of the park and providing opportunities for citizens to enjoy natural attributes and amenities of this preserve. Thanks again for the opportunity to share my comments.
I'm Ed Hassler, 5516 Sanibel Drive, and I was going to speak at length about the wonderful informal town hall that Purgatory Park has become. Meeting place, friendly people, happy dogs, but I have to get home to my dog who's been home alone for a number of hours, so I'm going to try to squeeze this in. It's not about the dogs. I've noticed that three, as a matter of fact, three signs restricting mountain biking have been removed in Purgatory Park. This is at the south end. You go over the metal bridge and up the paved area. On the left, there's two trails. One follows along the property lines of residents. A little bit further up, there's another trail that branches off, and a little bit further up, more up at the crest of the hill on the right-hand side or facing west, there used to be signs that said off-trail biking prohibited. Now, those signs are gone, not just the signs, but the signposts as well. They're gone. I noticed this probably this summer. I've also noticed a lot of mountain bike tire tracks, fat bike tire tracks up there. So unless the city has allowed mountain bikers to go up there, I'm guessing the mountain bikers have taken this into their own hands and have removed the signs. So I don't know if there's any way to enforce that. I personally have not seen mountain bikers in the park, but I'm told by other people who walk in the evening that they come out at night, like the bats. So in any event, thank you for listening. That's all I have.
Okay, oh, sorry.
Ed Wands, 6016 Pinewood Lane. Just some couple quick comments. Boardman and Hanley, there's spots not shown on the map there. I would be happy that they would be brought. In fact, I keep my dog away from those areas. Really deteriorated. So I would second, yes, there should be areas that are cordoned off from time to time as necessary because they just get overused. I would be in total support of that. One other thing about signage, we're talking about signage, just quick comment about that. We're talking about signage for people, but, and I will say that there's some of this in the thing, dogs need some signage too. So we're talking about this 50-foot buffer. It was suggested in the plan that maybe there should be shrubs. So if you had shrubs or some sort of indication for the dog to know, I should not be going beyond that area, that's signage for dogs. Just those two quick comments. So I will say master plans wield a significant power in the influence and development of our urban spaces. I used to live on Oak Knoll Terrace North. A multi-story parking ramp was constructed a few feet away from my backyard in the guise of preserving green space. So this is a stark reminder to me how master plans can be used to justify a number of things. So I think the appropriate question from the start of this process should be, what is the purpose of Purgatory Park? The revelation, at least to me anyway, that Purgatory Park was fundamentally changed from a city park to a natural preserve with the approval of the NRMP and the post plans in 2022 is a little troubling to me. This, to me, is a fundamental change of this site that was set almost a year before public was asked for comment to the input of the park. So because these were master plans were approved prior to seeking wide public input, the discussion of the overall purpose of Purgatory Park was cut off and is really no longer possible. So yes, if Purgatory Park is to be transformed into a nature preserve, then logically I think dogs must be, at least off-leash dogs, must be removed from the park, if that is the purpose of the park. And this plan details how the city will achieve this from start to finish. Over the next 5, at the end of 10 years from now, they will be off in a one little area, because that is what the plan says. So I think it's crucial to recognize that Purgatory Park serves a vital communal space for residents, and any change to the design and purpose should reflect the diverse needs of the community. So this is where I think our plan kind of fails us, because it really doesn't clearly own the needs of the community versus how we're going to achieve that. And then finally, and this is something that didn't get presented here, I am really sure the neighbors along Spring Lane have no clue that the plan includes removing undesirable trees, adding a parking lot and a dog park directly across the street from R1 zone housings. I'm sure their expectation is that Purgatory will remain as it is because it is, after all, a city park. By the time they find out, years from now, what they will hear is, well, we have this master plan that passed in 2024, and we can make some minor tweaks here and there. Maybe we'll put some bushes here or bushes there. But this is just the way it's going to be. And I think this is grossly unfair. just my own personal experience. So, and then really what I'm going to say, any verbal reassurances that we might hear don't matter a whit. Whatever's written in the plan is exactly what the city is going to do. So 10 years from now, that you're going to be confined to that. So I would never go to that proposed off-leash area because the design is dangerous. And rather than being a regular park member, I would pass through a few times a year on my way to someplace else. Thanks.
I think this goes back to what I said earlier, Virginia Berglund, Woodhaven, is that I think that the communication that this plan is out to the city, to the Minnetonka residents, has not been as well done as it could. I mean, 600 people with 52,000 residents. I mean, this is a big park where a lot of people use it. Why not improve the communication, maybe send emails out, have them know that the master plan is out there so they can look at it. So.
Hi, Shannon Riley, 18069 Tamarack Drive. I spoke last time, and I want to reemphasize that my understanding is that the purpose of the park, the intent of the people that donated the land to the city is specific to dogs being off leash. And I also want to express my extreme disappointment in the city. I've made 3 Freedom of Information requests, one to Matt Kumpka, one to the city attorney, and one through my representative, Kimberly Wilburn.
Yeah, just a little closer. Sorry, you can pull up towards you, yeah.
Okay. So not a single person responded to any of my Freedom of Information requests. So now, again, I'm going to specifically ask this park board for any kind of deeds, titles, and covenants relating to Purgatory Park. And I'm going to add some new ones now tonight. So it sounds like this topic has come up before, the off-leash. And so I would like city minutes relating to previous off-leash meetings. And I also want to know how much the city is spending on this master plan initiative, and including how much it's being, or I guess how much is the consultants are costing. And so then, according to Minnesota Statute 1303, you need to make this information available to my inspection, and you can email me. So shannonheights@gmail.com if you have any questions. And I do want to emphasize that there are both criminal and civil penalties for not complying. So. So anyway, I don't know if you have any questions about what I'm asking for.
No, thank you.
Okay.
Okay. We will move on to the Red Barn site. Okay, no one has any feelings about that. Design and standards for trails and signage.
Peterson, Hunter's Ridge. Regarding the signage, I think that it is a fantastic idea, Katie, that you had mentioned, to increase the number of signs that are around the area, specifically in the buffer zones and paved trails where dogs need to be on leash. I will tell you that the only time I've ever had any concern for safety in this park has been on the paved trails, where a man did not have his dog on a leash in a clearly designated area according to the park rules that you can only review at the entrance. However, I do have a dog that does way better off leash than he does on leash. He's not quite classified as leash reactive. However, he's much more sociable. He likes people a lot better. And it is my experience personally that better trained dogs go to off leash areas There's fewer conflicts, there's fewer opportunities for dogs to get in a fight when it is an open area that is accessible. So I think that if we are going to change the standards and potentially go to a fenced-in area, we need to be clear on where the dogs are allowed, where they're not. Is the fenced-in area going to be an option for people who want the smaller space? Will we still be allowed to use the prairie in the middle? I need to know so that I can help my dog live his best life. Not sure if it falls under signage, but the next thing I would mention is that regarding waste disposal, that's another concern of mine as a frequent user of the park. I think that if we're looking at the memorial benches or the different signs that are there, it would do us really well to incorporate more waste disposal options. Specifically, there's a memorial bench near the entrance to the prairie area that a lot of our off-leash dogs go. There's no waste disposal there. I think that would be a great place to have one, as well as any place where the off-leash area intersects primarily with a maintained trail. Thank you.
Ann Luthen, 18844 Chennault Way. I just had one comment, or I guess a suggestion about adding a signage for bikers. There's some parts of the main paved trail where I've been almost mowed down by people on electric bikes. I don't know if there's like a speed limit sign or something that could be added. I feel like that would just help with safety so I don't get mowed over by an electric bike.
Heather Holm, 15327 Lakeshore Avenue. Chair Wallach, can I comment on the Red Barn? I didn't get up fast enough. Yes. Thank you. I support the idea of having one centralized parking lot at the Red Barn site. Some of the board members and as well as people spoke today. The road going into the park has icing issues. We're piping pollutants right from the parking lot right into the creek. And there's been a history of car thefts over the years because that main parking lot is isolated and we have inadequate parking spaces in the park. The plan talked about expanding Stodola Road and even another parking site at one of the old homestead sites. And I just think from an environmental planning perspective, we should just put adequate parking, as much parking as we need, all in one place at the exterior of the park, where it's closer to Excelsior Boulevard, decrease in theft, one centralized place. And then we can even consider removing what we call the main parking lot now and turning that back into natural area in the park. So that's my comment on the Red Barn. Thank you.
Hello, Chris Kapishke, 4528 Saddlewood Drive. I have a question about the consolidation of the informal trails or whatever we're deciding to call them. I primarily walk in the back, and so I don't walk in the prairie area, and we use those trails to loop around and to do a lot of different things. We do figure eights, and I take my dogs back there every day. So can you kind of talk about that plan a little bit in terms of like what consolidation of those footpaths mean for in the wooded area? Thank you.
Hi, I'm Angela again, 5554 Nantucket Place. I'm in support for a reimagined holistic trail plan. I do think there are a lot of redundant trails, informal trails throughout the park that are undergoing some significant widening, erosion. I was hoping the plan might address some of those concerns. So I was hoping perhaps in the next iteration of this plan in May that it would have some suggestions for how to decrease trail size on the informal trails down to that 18 inches or how some of those erosion concerns were going to be mitigated. Thank you.
Hello, me again, Jillian McGarry, Minnetonka Boulevard. On signage, the first time I went to the Purgatory Dog Park, which is what people told me it was called, so I I parked at the library lot, and then I walked in with my dog, who was only a few months old, because I wanted to do off-leash recall training, but I just thought it was a dog park, so we were walking on the maintained trail without a leash, and a woman came up to me and said, you can't do that here, and I was like, oh, I thought this was the dog park, and she was really kind about it and walked me to the area that was unmaintained and showed me where to go. And over the course of weeks of going to the park, other community members actually showed me other trails I could take and where I could go and where I was supposed to leash my dog and not. But I guess the point is the signage was super confusing, and I think that a lot of the off-leash dogs on the main trail are more confusion than malice. So I don't think people are trying to break a rule or be bad about it. It's just they don't know. And then I agree, like adding fencing, like where there's close contact areas between the maintained and the unmaintained trail, fencing or screening of some kind is a good idea. And then in the higher conflict areas, like right at the parking lot and where some of the main trails intersect, like by the bridge, it might be a good idea to put like a couple sections of fence, not like fence the whole area, but like 4 or 5 panels of fence that form either a maze or a gate with signage on the front that says, from this point on, your dog must be leashed or you're entering a off-leash area, to better communicate that. It would also stop dogs who get a couple feet ahead of their owners from walking into the trail before the owner has a chance to put that leash on. And I think that would make people feel safer to see that barrier there where there's a physical indication to stop and leash your dog. Thank you.
My name is Craig Galciati. I'm at Ferris Lane 14414. There's a lot of talk about signs and warning people about areas that are not off leash or on leash, but I wonder if there could be signs to tell people that this is an off leash area, because there are so many parks that are prohibited from dogs being off leash. And it's like, if I don't want to eat peanuts, I sit at the table that doesn't have peanut butter. And so maybe there's a sign that they could have that would say, this is an off leash area. In general, the dogs are okay, or whatever you want to say. And dogs that misbehave can be, dealt with strongly, but not all the good dogs shouldn't be punished. And I think if the people that, want distance from dogs, know where they can go and have distance, and they realize that that's like 80 or 90% of the parks in Minnetonka, they won't feel like they're being abused by letting this area be off leash, because there are so few areas. And we used to go to the Bryant Lake Park, the dog area there, and it's pretty nice and it's pretty big, but there quite often it smells pretty bad, and it's a completely different atmosphere. The way the owners and the people hang out, it's not the same, and the community that's there happens so organically that it's really nice. So some signs for both sides would be nice. Thank you.
My name is Steve Curie. I live on 5876 Stony Brook Drive. Been a resident for about 35 years. Been walking my dogs off leash for 30 of those years. I see a lot of comments from a couple of people that live around the park. I see former DNR from Wisconsin making comments about what the park should be. You guys are deciding what the park should be, but I don't think you're taking really into consideration what do the people that use the park on a regular basis and have been using it for the last 25, 30, 40 years, what do they want? I don't think the survey was indicative of that. I think it was tainted because of the way it was stated. And I don't think you've really taken it into consideration what the people who are using the park, have been using the park, want. And maybe that's something you should take into consideration. It means votes, maybe not for you, but for your superiors, do it right. Just don't force it down everybody's throat when they don't want it. Thank you.
My name is Kathleen Nelson. Excuse me. I live at 4717 Forest Circle in Minnetonka, obviously. Are there any other parks in the city that have unleashed areas? Because if there are, I don't know about them. That might be something to put on a sign, maybe, mail it out. And the thing that I really like about Purgatory is that when you go there, you're essentially walking your dog off leash. It's unlike any other dog park that I've been to where the dogs run out and the people sit around. And yeah, maybe they have a good community or whatever. But I think in terms of, if you go from the parking lot down to the creek and back, it's about a mile. And we walk the dog. If we want the dog to interact with other dogs, we do. But that's unique. I think that it's an area where you can walk your dog off leash and not just stand around and watch them play. I didn't get a chance to read the 147-page report, and so tonight the word nature preserve just jumped right out at me. And is that the designation of this park? Is it supposed to be a nature preserve, or is it something that is preserving the sanity of the citizens? I don't know. Anyway, there you go.
I'm Karen Anderson, 5630 Mahoney Avenue. And I've walked in the park for 43 years and very regularly. It used to be that it was sort of funny, it was only maintained for ski trails. Pretty much otherwise it grew over and it was a very wild area. There were fox and just so many pheasants, so many animals out there. And I've loved the park always. I started kind of joking around that the park's gone to the dogs. And I didn't mind the dogs for quite a while. I felt like it was a friendly kind of thing. Lately, I have to speak as one of the people who has felt the safety issue in the park. I've had dogs jump on me. I've had dogs that run up and growl and their hackles are up. And, I like dogs, but I don't like that. And it's not fair to me, who's been walking in that park for so long, to have someone say to me, well, this is the dog part. This is where the dogs go, so you shouldn't be here. And when I've been walking there for 43 years, I don't feel I should only feel safe if I walk on that one big maintained trail. Dogs that aren't on leash should be under voice control. And unfortunately, especially the last few years, they have not all been under voice control. There are some very aggressive dogs, and I know it's not everybody, but I have felt unsafe more than once, like 5 times in the park, which is kind of new, really. And there's more dogs, more people. But when people say it's a dog park and say no one else can walk here who's not okay with a dog running up to them, it's a problem. I feel there's a lot of open dog supporters. I'm not totally against that, but I don't want every natural or less maintained trail to be off limits to people who don't have a dog with them because it's not safe. There's got to be some voice control, and maybe some trails that aren't the big main trail
that are leashed. So, anyway, thank you.
My name's Lisa Cepek. I live on Gaywood Drive in Minnetonka. One question, one comment. Comment would be, we have the Minnetonka memo. It's available and sent to our houses. It would be nice if the information that, even about the survey in general, but now that's passed, so we can't go back in time and put that in the memo. But some of the information from what's going on with the park right now could be placed in the Minnetonka memo. I'm not sure why it hasn't. Second for me would be one of the comments that Representative, or I don't know if you call the representative or park member Hanley, commented on today was the preserved section, and that there could be other preserved sections that would then become unavailable. My concern is, who decides how much of that area? Is that you that would decide how much areas would be set aside for preservation? Also, when is an area that was preserved become open again to the public? So I would hope that the master plan would look at what areas, like what are the qualifications of a natural area to when it can be reopened. And I know this doesn't have to do with signage, but the signage could be then temporary for where things can be open for work and where things could not be. Thank you.
Hi, Nikki Engelhart, 16411 Temple Drive North, Minnetonka. I'd like to start with last meeting, and someone asked are there any other off-leash areas? And I know in the ordinance that any unmaintained area is considered off-leash. I went to Lone Lake Park last week after someone mentioned it. The big sign there that says trail rules says dogs must be leashed on a 6-foot leash no longer. Nothing about unmaintained areas. So talking about signage, if we are talking about Purgatory Park, I do think the signs need to be updated there, but you should also think about updating all the other parks. But that park is overridden with those mountain biking trails, and I wouldn't feel safe leaving my dog off leash at a mountain bike, because the mountain bike hits my dog, that person's hurt, my dog's hurt, there's no win there. But going back to signage at Purgatory Park, I agree that there should be signs of reasonable risk. So if you are a person that decides to walk on the signaged area that says dogs are allowed off leash, and your toddler is carrying a snack, there is your own reasonable risk there. I know, and we all know as we go there, that dogs are playing, they're running, we bend our knees. I assume that reasonable risk that dog might knock me over and break my arm or something. I've known people at the park that have dogs there that still walk there that have broken their arms. So there's some reasonable risk that should maybe be included on the signs of, hey, if you are walking on this path off leash, dogs may run up to you. Dogs may try to get your snacks. It doesn't mean my dog's not under voice control, but there's food. That's a dog. She's going to run up and look. I can probably call her back, but there's reasonable risk there. Especially letting your kids eat, sit, play. I just think that should be added to the signs as well. And speaking back to the sense of community and safety, I'm not very big. I'm 5'3", 110-pound woman. This is the only place I'd ever feel comfortable walking after dark by myself because of the sense of community. I know all these people, and even the people I don't know with dogs, I feel an innate sense of trust. So I would argue the safety because of that community is so huge at Purgatory. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Glenn Wilson. I live at 12613 James Road, and I'll be brief. The whole contention that Purgatory Park should be a nature preserve, I think is kind of ludicrous. It's 150 acres, and you'd think that we live in Manhattan or something around here. We all know that Minnetonka's got open areas everywhere with sloughs and Minnehaha Creek running through and so on. There's nothing special about Purgatory Park other than it's 150 acres and it has some varying topography. There's just nothing special about it particularly. I don't understand why. I mean, this whole notion of the nature preserve is what is causing people to go, well, we should get rid of the dogs because they trample on the nature preserve, and now you've got feces everywhere and so on, and it's preventing the habitat from. It's 150 acres, and we have habitat all over Minnetonka. I just don't understand this. That's all I have to say.
Hello, my name is Eric Marrera. I live at 5554 Nantucket Place. There's been a lot of information here. I appreciate releasing all the comments on there. I read through every single one of them, and there's actually a lot of insights you can gain from that. I will give some context that, yes, we live on the northeast corner of the park, and so I bring that up because what I feel like hasn't been addressed much at all is the enforcement, the actual enforcement that already exists, but I don't want to play down the police officers or anybody because there may be a very good reason for it. But all I can say is we've lived there for 16 plus years, and I certainly feel like it's just not being enforced like it was. So you can make all of the signs and all the borders and all of those things, but if you can't enforce them, you're still going to have the same problems of people not following the rules. I understand that there's a lot of people that are trying to follow the rules, and they do. But I'm not sure how we can get the enforcement out there again, but that seems like something that could start quite quickly as long as we figured out how that might be able to happen. Now, I did also read in the comments, though, that there are some people who said that even the community service officers or police, whoever happened to be there, actually have told them that they are not allowed to have their dogs off leash in the areas where they supposedly can. So it's a little bit of make sure everybody knows what the rules are and make sure that the rules are enforceable no matter what ends up coming out of the plan. Thanks.
Okay, so we'll move on to the last section, dogs in the park, and just a couple, yeah, you know, I got a list of things. Got to read my list. So if anybody wants to speak, just line up. Remember, try to keep your focus on the feedback on the Purgatory Park Master Plan, and try to keep your comments under 3 minutes. And yeah.
Okay. Hi, sorry, me again. Jillian McGarry, Minnetonka Boulevard. So I know we have talked about public safety a little bit, and I have a little bit of a different perspective that I wanted to share. And of course, I have a study, but Harvard published a study April 14th, 2023, quote, "It ties dog walking to a sharp rise in injuries among people holding the leash. Dog leash injuries sent 32,000 people to the ER in 2020. And according to Johns Hopkins, quote, researchers found that women and all adults age 65 and older were more likely to sustain serious injuries such as fractures and traumatic brain injuries as a result of walking a leashed dog. So this actually happened to me. A few years ago, I got tangled in the dog's leash and fell down a flight of stairs. Actually recovered from that one, bravo. But then 2 months ago, my leash dog ran for a squirrel and injured my shoulder, and I now have a fantastic shoulder surgery scheduled for April of this coming next month. So please don't take away that area for a safe place for people to exercise their dogs, especially for people who can't risk a dog leash injury, people who are older, and people who have disabilities as well. Sorry, I'm going to skip around a little bit now. But the veterinarian who spoke at the meeting on February 7th, he said that confining dogs to a fenced area would increase dog aggression, spread disease, and degrade the environment. And I've seen this when visiting Minnewaska and Elm Creek parks. The fenced area seems to attract dogs with poor training because the owners rely on the fence to supervise rather than having the training. We stopped visiting Minnewaska because of frequent dog aggression, muddy trails, and just boredom from walking in a loop. And then the Star Tribune ran an article on Sunday with the headline, "Don't Skip Your Dog's Walk," and here's why. The article goes on to say that dogs need, quote, mental stimulation that comes from seeing new things or from the point of view of a dog sniffing new things. Dogs that don't have these needs met are subjected to some of the same effects of long-term chronic stress on their health that people are, ranging from depression and anxiety to problems with their immune systems. So the article goes on to say that walks should be at the dog's pace, and we don't prioritize our schedule. Purgatory's current off-leash trails build that community of healthy dogs. And since 80% of dog bites are occurring in homes, I think having an outlet for dog exercise and stimulation makes the community safer.
Greg Johnson, 18810 Kingswood Terrace. Ditto on all the signage. I think that's going to go a huge way to helping the problem we have out there. Kudos to the gentleman who talked about compliance and enforcement. That's one thing I think that the city has kind of let us down. It seems like the Wild Wild West out there. The lack of enforcement has let people get lazy and encourage bad habits. So I think a little bit of enforcement will go a long way. I remember the LED signs that they would put out in front of the park every couple years. It would say, leash up, your dogs must be on leash. Could do a wonder. I hate to see we have to wait for the entire master plan to be finished before we put up signs, because I think the signs and a little bit of enforcement will get rid of these negative interactions. Maybe so we don't have to do as many big structural changes or, removal changes, but two huge things. And very quickly, just a little bit about the trail and the idea that you can remove some of them. The trail's I've been there 15 years, go every day, a couple times a day sometimes. New trails come up almost every winter when we're walking through the snow. Sometimes there's a guy who cross-country skis or snowshoes. Sometimes I'm doing it. I'm walking through the woods, and that, as you pack it down, the guy behind you is in his footsteps. Next thing you know, that is the trail through the woods. And it moves this way. Sometimes there's a new one. I'm on a new trail now where you guys have gone in and cut a lot of the buckthorn, and I'm walking in new trails because it's a new place for me to explore with my dog. And so I would hate to see, any real effort be to remove trails. I don't know how you remove trails. We're going to walk in the woods. We love it. So the idea that you kind of can get rid of these cow trails, if anything, you should use some of the wood chips that are being chopped up on the east side of the thing. They're taking them out of the park. For what reason? They should be laying them down where all these gullies are, where it's muddy right now, and I think we'd all be really happy about that. But thanks for letting me speak.
Hello, my name is Gerald Gershon, and I live at 1311 April Lane, Minnetonka. I'm a dog owner. I want to say that up front. And I serve on the board of directors of Friends of Minnetonka Parks, also known as FOMP. Yesterday, our board of directors emailed a letter that included feedback and suggestions for the Purgatory Park Master Plan draft. I would like to summarize that feedback on behalf of the Friends of Minnetonka Parks Board of Directors. Thank you for the opportunity to provide feedback, and thank you to staff for initiating the process and for their work preparing the plan. We look forward to the citywide park system master planning process, as the plans will provide a key framework to foster equitable access to biodiverse parks. We have three key areas of feedback, and I'll just summarize these. One is equitable park access. We believe that the draft master plan needs additional review to determine concrete ways to remedy the equity, access, and community displacement issue. A guiding principle of the post plan is to promote equity and inclusion. FOMP supports this guiding principle and agrees that all Minnetonka parks must provide equitable access to all park visitors. We ask that you consider master plan amendments, additions that offer concrete solutions to address this inequity. Number two, environmental sustainability and natural resources restoration. The draft master plan does not address or characterize the environmental degradation from park visitor overuse or unstructured use, nor a vision for a reimagined trail system that balances visitor access and the preservation of natural resources. Can the consultants be asked to perform a more in-depth analysis of environmental impacts such as parking lots, recreational amenities, extent of informal trails, and off-leash dogs, keeping in mind that Purgatory Park is a preserve? A guiding principle in the Post Plan is to advance environmental sustainability and resiliency. Number 3, public safety and unenforceable ordinances. Ensuring that all park visitors feel welcome and safe while visiting a park is a mission and responsibility of the City and Park Board. FOMP strongly supports this mission. The public survey and comments in the draft master plan reveal that a significant percentage of park visitors don't feel safe. This is an urgent issue, and we suggest immediate action to remedy this significant public safety concern to ensure parks are safe for everyone. Lastly, we suggest the next draft of this master plan clearly articulates and illustrates the linkages between the NRMP and Post plans. FOMP supports moving forward with the council-approved directives identified in the NRMP and Post plans, and emphasizes the importance that the Purgatory Park Master Plan aligns with those directives and recommendations. Thank you very much.
Hello, I'm Jim Hamill, 2210 Plymouth Road in Minnetonka. First of all, thanks to all of you for considering this master plan and considering overall planning for this marvelous resource called Purgatory. It's of huge value to the city of Minnetonka and all its residents. One of the things you will additionally do, it strikes me, is look to this planning process as a way to assure the precious value of Purgatory for generations to come. Therefore, this work is terribly important as to what you will provide, what direction you will provide in terms of guidance for the city, guidance and recommendations to the City Council. It strikes me that there is some considerable risk inherent in talking about increased use of unleashed areas increased utilization of the unleashed area. My point is, considerable number of neighboring communities do not have unleashed opportunities for dogs. If that's the case, and Minnetonka's Purgatory is one of the only, one of the few, if not only, park that allows unleashed use by dogs, will we not inherit a lot of visitors from outside Minnetonka? Will we not, as was testified at your last meeting, people from other communities besides outside Minnetonka came to Purgatory to use the unleashed privilege? If that increases significantly, because as has been demonstrated in one of the letters to you, there are very few, if any, a few far western suburbs of the metro area allow unleashed. Will we not inherit a lot more activity in the unleashed area? If that's the case, there will be considerable additional pressure on the issues that were raised as a concern: degradation, safety, etc. Therefore, I hope that you give serious consideration to alternatives to the off-leash possibility, and consider very seriously what might be the prospect of significant increases in the volume of and traffic for the unleashed area. If that's the case, will in the long term this park migrate to be literally a dog park. Please give it consideration. Thank you.
Steve Schmerler, 5215 Forest Road. I did like that ambassador idea that struck a chord here. I think that would be a good way to police the area with respect to the new users of the park. And let's see, the reason I came up here, is probably because the reason why most of these people are here, or maybe a lot of them are here, because there's an anger that's circulating the elimination of off-leash dog walking. And so it was good to be here to see, could we bring up that other map? I just have a question about it. What I was hearing is that there isn't a push to eliminate the off-leash walking within the park. And I would like more clarity around that. Also, if there is no push to do eliminate off-leash dog walking, why is that 3 acres or 2.5 acres with a wetland in it being identified as an off-leash, potential off-leash dog park location? 3 acres is nowhere near big enough to accommodate the number of dogs that are coming to Purgatory Park. At times there's 50 dogs in there. And so, with that, I would like to get some clarity on how off-leash dog walking is viewed by the board. Thank you.
I wasn't following the categories, so this is not specifically about the dog thing. It's just general statements about the plan. Heather Holm, 15327. I want to preface my comments by telling you about the things I care about regarding our city parks. I care about community accessibility to parks. I believe parks are for everyone and should be accessible to all. I care about community safety. So no one should be displaced from a park, have to change their visitation pattern, be disturbed while visiting a park, or feel fearful. I care about environmental sustainability. I'm a pollinator conservationist, natural resources background. I can't not care about that. That's what I do. And I care about the preservation and restoration of our parks, natural resources. I firmly believe that everyone derives benefits from high quality natural areas, including improved human health and well-being, stress reduction, and these biodiverse spaces that we're all working hard to create for the community provide these amazing nature-based places right here in our city, so that sense of place. I believe these things are important to many people, as this was expressed and summarized in the 2+ years of public outreach and feedback process for both the NRMP and post plans, as well as the 10-month plus process for this draft master plan. And I also believe that you park board members also care about these things. Otherwise, I don't think you would be willing to serve on the park board, so thank you for that. I visit the park to walk, ride my bike, bird watch, walk my friend's or my neighbor's dog, to take photos, to document pollinators. I also pick up litter. I regularly volunteer in the park, and I help to restore the park. I want to emphasize that I don't use the park. I value the park, and I want the park to be a community asset for everyone to enjoy. I think the draft master plan is a great start. I do feel it's missing some key prescriptive solutions to some of these problems that I mentioned. And I would like to see more concrete directives that reflect the directives of the NRMP and post plan. I would like you to consider how can we address this public safety issue. Some people no longer visit the park. I don't think that was identified in the public survey. In the draft plan, I did not identify any immediate or solutions to this problem. How do we get people coming to the park that have been displaced? I would like you to consider how we can immediately address and rectify the public safety issues. I know you all care about this. I don't feel comfortable as a community member if people don't feel safe coming to one of our parks. And I want to figure out how we can sustain the quality of the natural resources today and into the future. I would like this park preserve plan to include a holistic vision of immersive trails through high quality restored natural resources. Some of the comments this evening are equating restoring areas to keep people out. That is the opposite of why we work in the park. We are trying to make it beautiful. We want these sites to be high quality and beautiful for people to enjoy. But with this master plan process, we need a trail plan and a sustainable plan for everybody to access these high quality sites. So getting away from making our own trails everywhere, or what I may quantify as unfettered use. We need structured use that is provided through this master plan. Lastly, I just want to say that I hope that some of the ideas, comments, and solutions that you've heard this evening begin to paint a picture of what the community wants. I hope that you also consider that it paints a picture of ways that we can paint the picture that this park is a safe, accessible, and sustainable park long-term. I just want to say I'm ready to work on some of these solutions, and I would be willing to serve on a citizen task force to find solutions that work for the whole community. And I want to offer to anyone here or listening, I would be happy to walk the park with you and talk about why I think the park is special and why I spend time restoring the park. Thank you.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak again. I'm Angela Marrera, 5554 Nantucket Place. I have lived at my current address for over 18 years. We largely moved to our current address because of the proximity to Purgatory Park. The street I live in is a cul-de-sac, and it's off of Excelsior Boulevard, and that's a fairly busy street, so I really appreciate having Purgatory Park basically in my backyard. I feel very lucky and privileged. We don't own a cabin up north or vacation property or CRP land. We don't have any special place we go for wilderness. So we love the idea of nature where we live. And according to many of the comments in the addendum of the Purgatory Park Master Plan, I want to believe that many residents of this city feel the same sentiments. I walk every day in the park, and usually with my canine buddy. I used to look forward to these outings, but there has been a significant shift in culture and mentality. Perhaps it's due to the CSO officers not being present in the park anymore. I'm not sure. But now I approach my walk with apprehension and vigilantly keep a close eye on my surroundings to potential dogs that might run out or jump up on me, my family, or my dog. Over the month of February, I tallied 88 unleashed dogs in parking lots on the main trail or in my neighborhood. And one very frightening incident was when I was going to open my door and a gentleman was walking through my backyard and was trying to retrieve his dog from my backyard. I didn't feel safe going outside, but I did go outside, and my neighbor explained to me what the situation was. I get dismissed, told off, or bullied when I ask for people to be respectful. How do you build community when people are uncaring to other park visitors? I'd also be willing to serve on a board or a citizen task force on this problem because it affects me every day of my life. Thank you.
Peterson, Stratford Road, Hunters Ridge. Again, I wanted to thank all of you for taking the time. It's obviously drawing late into the evening, so I'll be brief. Thank you for the time that you've put into developing this draft plan, for hearing the community commentary, and for allowing us to participate in this process. I wanted to offer some final thoughts. We've heard a lot of recommendations. We've heard a lot of feelings and opinions. Some of them have value, some of them don't. And that's my opinion. But one of the things that I want you to consider is that this is a gem, and it is one of the many privileges that exist in the Minnetonka community. This is an area of affluence and influence. You have access to resources and opportunities that are not available to other areas in the metro, and it would be a disservice to our greater community to close it off or to make decisions based on the fear that outsiders would benefit from this great privilege that we have here in Minnetonka. I think that you've heard a lot of ideas around sustainable access. I think that there are a lot of opportunities to maintain this sanctuary and to keep it available for our companions and ourselves and the ecology that flourishes here. Thank you once more. Have a great day.
Derek Mitchell, 16910 Excelsior Boulevard. So I was just thinking about like the signs without signs. I got 2 little puppies, lots of energy, running around, just moved here, and it's like, I don't know how far they can go. So if there's maybe like a ribbon on a tree or something that let me know like 20 more feet, call them back or something, kind of warn me that way. Just because I'm starting to explore the park, I like the park, it's just without the maps, the signs. But if I saw that, then it'd be like, hey, let's go over here. Then I could probably stop that. So that was just my thought. Thanks.
Hi, Gerald Gershon, 13111 April Lane. This time I'm not speaking as the board of directors of FOMP, but I'm just speaking on my own. And when I think about the term preserve, I mean, that word preserve should mean something. It means to preserve something. When I look at the map, and I also want to point out that several have commented about lack of community input. The Natural Resources Master Plan, the Post Plan, had significant opportunities for citizen input, and I compliment the staff and the boards on providing that for us all. So that was fully vetted at the time. And so the preserve designation is there. When I look at this map, and I understand that you heard a lot at the last meeting that I wasn't at, it does seem to me like a bit of an overreaction. I look at it, and the pink areas that are to be preserved for non-off-leash use seem very small to me. And I'm just not sure how we can work on preserving the park. I think there needs to be more balance. Remember, it's a preserve, and I think you have to ask yourselves, is it a preserve? Is it a dog park? Is it a combination? This to me looks like it's kind of an overreaction. So thank you for listening.
Okay. With that, I will close public comment to, oh, sorry, one more.
Cindy Iden, 16824 Excelsior Boulevard. People have questioned the title of this as being a preserve. I've walked this Purgatory Park Preserve since it started, and I've always known it as a preserve. So I don't think that this is a brand new title. And preserve does mean preserving a space for nature. And that's what I'm going to talk about. We talk about how we as human beings want to use this space. But we also, as being human beings, we have some obligation towards nature to allow space for nature to thrive. And I'm very concerned if we allow for off-leash dogs in that whole area, which includes wetland, that we will diminish, we will not allow nature to thrive. We will not allow those that don't have a voice or owners that have a voice to thrive in this park, and that's already been demonstrated. So I'm speaking for those critters. We need those critters. We need those critters. That's part of what creates our planet to be a healthy place. And without those critters, we're all going to have a much more diminished existence on this planet, period. So we do have an opportunity, and I think the NRMP and the Post Plan have made an attempt to go towards that. I'm a little concerned that we are really limiting. I am concerned about how little we are really preserving for that expanse of nature. And nature doesn't live in just little tiny postage stamp sizes. It needs space. And it has been shown there's scientific evidence that shows when dogs or human beings walk through a space consistently, nature withdraws. And so the more we have, the more trails we have less and less space, and that would be why we would condense the trails so that there actually would be some space, some greater area for the rest of nature to thrive.
Pete Brown, 5023 Mayview Road. You guys got your hands up for you on this one. I want to say thank you for changing the map from last time, because last time you had this weird little oval thing there that was not going to work at all, and now it seems to be bigger. And that was only in a month's time that you reevaluated that. So that's good. So I think you should take everything considered and evaluate it more even. Nature's surviving. Your houses, my house on Mayview. I see eagles all the time. You know, nature's going to do what it's going to do. It's going to survive. I've seen owls in the park at Purgatory there, up in the trees, watching my dogs chase squirrels that they're never going to catch. One big plan, I guess, is that number again with the number of people that you took on your survey. If there's 52,000 people here and we only did 600, with all the masses that have come out in the last meeting and this meeting here for the park, can we maybe do the survey again? Because I did not see it. I did not participate in that. I sure would like to see it again, have more people put their input into it again. I'm sure you'll get more than 600. You'll probably get more than 6,000. Somehow let us know what we need to do and put our comments in there, and we'd like to see this thing go forward again. I have 2 dogs. When I have to walk on that red area there, my dogs are voice commanded and trained and on leash to sit and watch our friends walk by as they use the trail that they're supposed to. They come through the regular trails, the river there and the mountains there. I see a lady reading a book the other day. She came through. My dog sat down, let her walk through. There's no parting with that. All the other dogs off leash get along real well. And again, it's the dogs that are on leashes that you have the biggest problem with. Somebody says they want to invite you to walk through there. I'd like to invite you, Pete Brown, 5023 Mayview Road. Walk through there with my dogs. Go on the trails I go onto. See the people I meet. See how we respond to them. They respond to us. I invite you to do that. You know, nature's going to survive. We're going to survive. We need a place for our dogs to go. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, everyone. We'll close the floor for public comment, and we will open it back up for park board discussion or feedback for the Purgatory Park Master Plan.
Well, since I'm never shy, I guess I'll go first. I guess I'll respond to some of the questions and then kind of make a comment about the plan. I tried to write down I kind of lost track of all of them, and it looks like a lot of people have left who might have posed a question. But I want to respond to a few of them anyways, so it goes in the minutes. There's a few items that kind of came up multiple times. Preserve came up a lot. Some people seem to be surprised by that designation. Purgatory Park has been a community park and preserve since sometime at the very least in the early 90s. I don't know when it became a preserve, when the city used those classifications, but I asked earlier this evening, and if you go back to the 2001 post plan, it refers to the park as a preserve, and I think some other things in the 90s that talk about it as preserve. So preserve is not a new idea. It's not a new quick bait and switch around dogs. It exists. And technically, Purgatory is what we classify within Minnetonka, a community park and a preserve. And the post plan goes through all those details. And to be honest, I'm going to guess most of the parks you like in Minnetonka are preserves. You know, Hillaway, Kinzel, Lake Rose, Jadana, all of them have preserve appended to their classification. I mean, they're also parks. They might be community parks, etc. And preserves is intended to be sort of like a completely touchless nature preserve. What it really means is it's trying to preserve the unique, my understanding anyways, is trying to maintain and the unique natural resources that exist there and allow for passive recreation. So you're not going to see huge jungle gyms and playground sets within the preserve section of a park. Soccer fields, you won't see any athletic fields within the preserve section of a park. So that's not a new concept. Regarding the size of the survey and the fact that we only had 600 responses and 1,000, I think there was a posting, I think, on the Minnetonka Memo this last month about the great success we had with, I think it was sustainability or something, which had 900 responses, which was one of the largest responses they've ever had in the city for a city survey. So you might be disappointed in the number, but the reality is we can only gather what people submit. And 600 is actually a robust area, and I applaud the staff and the other people that went out, the consultants who went out at the post plan and in this plan, gathering community input in the parks. There was a walking through the park at Purgatory, there was an event at Unmapped, the post plan had meetings in community centers. There was a meeting, I think, here in the community. There was a kickoff open house here in the city hall about this event. They were communicated on the Minnetonka Memo. They were communicated on the website. If you signed up for the various park email blasts you can get, it was communicated through that. I don't believe this. One comment was that there's the city has a email list for all residents. I don't believe that exists. I'm obviously only a volunteer. I'm not an official, but I know it's come up in other things when we were trying to do outreach from the Sustainability Committee, and I think there's a list of like 6,000 names that we have, or email addresses that we have in general, if you haven't signed up for some sort of list. So I commend the effort of outreach, and it's actually a pretty robust number of people who expressed feedback. And if you take into account just the post plan and the natural resource plan, there's close to 4,000, I think close to 4,000 comments or survey responses. So it's a pretty good effort. And if you were in the park, which a lot of you've been, there were signs posted from the spring in the park about get involved in the process, the master planning is here. And I think Jonathan's notes show that I think there were 10 signs at one point posted there, and as of this morning, they're still posted there. So there was opportunity to involve and engage. And the last thing that came up, a couple people brought up, and it was brought up last time, was the notion that notion's the wrong word, but the understanding that there may have been covenants within the property transfers from the people who either gave or sold or made available to the city parcels that increase the size of Purgatory Park. In particular, most recently, the most recent one I'm aware of is the Riley property, which is kind of right in the center of the park, or in the center of the wooded area of the park. And I did ask about that because I was curious if there might have been limitations. And in fact, Christine Riley, who was the property owner, was very engaged in restoration and preservation. She was hiring the same firms that the city used to restore the park. She wanted to have the efforts be consistent. And the terms under which she made the property available to the city at a favorable price included that it continued to be restored and maintained as the city is planning from a national resource standpoint. So in fact, her stated intent as codified in the resolution to the council was that it be maintained in that kind of manner. And there's no language in there about preserving and protecting the rights of the dogs. Now, if someone wants to go out and do a detailed title search, I suppose it's possible there's something there, but certainly the language that was accepted by her in transferring the property doesn't reference that. And I just want to share that because I know I was a little put out tonight when we were kind of threatened with criminal and sanctions if we don't respond, because that's usually not a way to influence people or win friends. But I don't think that exists. And in fact, the support that people who may help make the park larger was that it be preserved. Finally, just so I don't have to comment again, on the plan itself, as I said earlier, I really think it's good. I think there's some areas that I've already commented on. I think that could be addressed or whatever. The one thing I did want to say is, and this is our first master plan, so I'm not sure what my expectation was for what it would be like. And this is also a unique park because I know from talking about this, trying to work the issue of dogs it took a lot of effort. As far as the plan, the part I missed was more of the what if. If it's the master plan for the park, what about how we might develop that space between the Red Barn towards the firehouse, or what about if we'd done this? Or, in other words, this is almost a status quo. How do we resolve the existing routes and structures and problems we see in the park? And I know when we did the post plan almost felt more expansive in terms of what ifs about. And I know this isn't a master plan. Shouldn't be just what ifs. It should be more concrete. But I just think there's some things that we might have explored more, or maybe we can explore more as things go along. So I guess that's it for me.
Thanks. Yeah, I have several comments, but Kelly, I would just say in that situation, if you could follow up with whatever documents would be appropriate.
On the data request, I will, yes.
Yeah, yep. So I would be interested in seeing that too, but as Dave has kind of covered it. So a couple ideas. I think, we're coming along. We're not there yet with this draft. I think there are some things that people have brought up that would be good to address. I do think we need to be careful how we're putting things in there, wording things. If it's not, to make sure that it's not, this is going to happen, but these are possible ideas that are in consideration. I think a great idea that people have brought up tonight that I've been thinking of is creating a task force. We have two ideas of what this park currently is or will be. Everybody wants this park to be around in 20 years, 50 years. So we're technically all on the same team. How do we mesh these two ideas together to get the most equitable for everyone opportunities? And I think that includes having a task force that represents restoration and represents off-leash dogs, having them come together and work together. And the mountain bike trails have been highly successful because they are willing to put in the work. We have the trail bosses who maintain the trails and have the workers that work with them. So if we can have something similar here for the off-leash dog people, there were several gentlemen that had a similar idea, and we'll probably be involved with that. But to really, here are the rules that are in place, here are the signs, we're going to self-enforce. Maybe we do have a community service officer involved with the process too, and just really maintain that so that we don't, the intention is not to take away anything. The intention is to make sure that this is something that is still there. Because I do think this is a really special park, personally. So, and I'd like to see it as long for the next 20 years, 30 years, and beyond to continue to be something great. So I think taking some of the advice tonight, revising, tweaking this plan.
I would like to add on to that. I think this idea of community, it obviously brings a lot of people out. This is a really high priority. And I think even changing like use the park versus like get to enjoy the park is an important shift to think about. I think that somebody brought up. And so I love what you said about like, this is something we really care about. Don't you owe it to your children, your grandchildren to also enjoy that park and have it in a meaningful way? So I think having both sides represented and finding a solution that's community oriented is obviously a big task, but also one that I think is imperative if we want to continue to have this park in years and years to come. So I just want to second what you said. I think it was really smart.
Regarding being able to make comments, I know that there's not a lot of people left here to hear this, but I just wanted to remind people that you can make public comments to this draft master plan between now and the end of March. So it's not like all opportunities for communicating have disappeared. There's another 3 weeks, 3.5. I personally would like to see more red on here. For the short term, I'm okay with it as it is, but I would like to see this to me is suggesting that the only areas that are really going to be restored are going to be the red parts, and that doesn't seem like a lot to me.
Okay. Does anyone else have anything? Okay. With that, I think we can move on to Park Board member reports. Okay. I was going to say, with nothing there, we can move on to information items.
Thank you, Chair. We do have one information item tonight. Sarah, I believe, is going to cover that one. Leslie submitted it, and of course, like I said, she's out. So Sarah will cover that one.
Yeah, so Leslie submitted an update on the Community Forest Management Plan, which is actually something you'll see in May as well. So we'll have a busy meeting in May. I'm going to read this to you, actually. City Natural Resources and Forestry staff are continuing to work with our consultant, Bolton & Mank, to develop the city's Community Forest Management Plan, the CFMP. This planning effort was identified as a high priority need in the recently adopted Natural Resource Master Plan and is funded through the 2024 CIP. Information regarding the plan and community-wide survey was released last fall on Minnetonka Matters to gather input. Staff also reached out to the community members at various locations, such as the farmers market, Spooktacular, ICA Food Shelf. There were 2 focus groups that were held with residents, business owners, volunteers, and natural resource specialists to gather additional input on needs related to forestry programs, communication and outreach, sustainability, and resilience. The consultant is currently working on the draft, goals and strategies that will lead to a more healthy and resilient community forest. Focus areas of the plan include monitoring, inventory, and assessment, which will track current conditions and monitor for change in the community forest, tree life, replanting, community adaptation and resilience, programs, policies, and resources, and implementation. So more information on the existing conditions and goals, drafts, and strategies will be presented in May. So stay tuned.
Okay. upcoming park board agenda items.
So that kind of ties into that. So we, our next official meeting will be in May. So May 1st, we do not have a meeting in April. So April 3rd meeting, we do not have. At the May meeting, we'll have the Purgatory Master Plan final review, and as Sarah just mentioned, the Community Forest Management Plan. June is set for our CIP, so our Capital Improvement Plan for 2025 through 2029. We'll have a draft of that in June before that then goes to the City Council for a study session. So looking forward to that. And then one upcoming event, Saturday, March 23rd, we have the Spring Extravaganza, which is here at the Community Center. And that's it for upcoming schedule.
Okay. We are at the motion to adjourn. Do I hear one?
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Do I got a second? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.